Yes, we can hear you, Rhoda.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a cold morning, but I'm happy to have you all. My name, as someone has mentioned, is Rhoda Wairiuko. Rhoda Wairiuko, I'm a HR practitioner, HR consultant, trainer with ACHRP. I've been training with them for the last 2 years. And from the look of names, I think I've met some of you. We have interacted in our forums, be it conferences, in our symposium, and also in our webinar. So today we have a very interesting topic that we want to cover, which is HR competencies. And I want to believe that majority of us are in this field of HR, and that's why we maybe have joined this forum so that we can get our professional and competency development, and also to get our CPD as required by IHRM. So as I said, apart from being a HR trainer, a HR consultant, I'm one of your colleagues. I practice in HR. I've been in this industry for the last 20 years. And I can say I'm enjoying my journey in terms of the HR profession. Again, besides that, I think I've also taken a detour that I'm in my final studies of my legal studies, just to combine the two, because as you can know what is happening in the workplaces, a lot of industrial relations and litigations are happening in HR in terms of how we develop our contracts, how we handle our disciplinary, how we deal with the union. So it's just the same part of the package that we have to closely work with those people. So that is me in a nutshell. And I'm really, really excited to be with you this morning, to be taking you through this course of HR competency. And maybe just to start us off, I would want to, maybe those people who are able to unmute the mic, just a few of us, you can just introduce yourself, tell us your name, tell us where you work, and you could also give us one or two of your expectations that in this course for HR competencies, by the end of the 3 hours that we've been allocated, this is what I would expect to pick from this training. Or probably when I saw this HR competency among the many arrays of trainings that ACHRP is offering, I picked on this training because of this, and I expected to learn this. Let me just hear from a few. If you're not able to unmute, you could just write your comments on the chat, and I'll be able to read, so that we are able to level down our expectation. We could start with anyone in any order. Samsung, I can see you have unmuted. Kindly proceed.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Abdirizak Adan Dida.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Isiolo County.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a HR officer.
HR officer?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You work with the county government?
Yes, county government of Isiolo.
Isiolo. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
What is your expectation for this training this morning?
I hope the training will be successful and will add more skills for us as a HR officers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm proud to be here today.
We also have, we are honored actually to have you on board all the way from Isiolo, county government represented. Welcome, welcome, Abdi. So we'll not call you Samsung, we will call you Abdi.
Abdi Rizak.
Thank you, Abdi Rizak.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, karibu. Next, to take the mic. And once you're able to introduce yourself, kindly unmute so that we are able to hear each other. We are quite a number of us. Mm-hmm. Salim, you can pick up.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Grace Nganga. Joining you from Mili Fruits. We are based in Mtwapa, Mombasa. We are great to be part of this forum.
Mm-hmm. Karibu sana. That's Grace. Grace, you're the one who is going by the name Salim as well? Your gadget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's have two more people. I want to hear your expectation. Grace, you didn't tell us your expectation.
Well, my expectation basically in terms of HR competencies, I know that HR is a very dynamic space, and well, I would want to know what it takes to to be able to drive our businesses to the next level in terms of HR competencies. There are a lot of changes, business re-engineering. What is it that we need as HR professionals to be able to drive businesses to the next level in terms of HR competencies? So that is what I'm looking forward to probably learn and gain the skills that will enable me to do that.
That's very great, Grace. That's very great. We are going to touch on this to see how HR can add value into the business. And I like the way that you're able to pick that HR is very dynamic. It has evolved over time. And as we evolve, we are evolving because of the business requirements and the business needs. So as we carry out our HR duties, how do we add value? And how do we gain those competencies that should be able to drive us to drive the business so that we keep on saying we want to be on the driving seat? But what are we going to drive? Do we know what it takes? And do we know what we are driving? So we're going to cover that, Grace. And thank you for that elaborate expectations. I hope by the end of the 3 hours, we'll have covered, or probably not covered everything. It will be an opener for you to actually direct you what to do more, what to study more, and what to research more on. So that's very good. Robert, you want to take the next?
Yes. Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Robert Morage. I'm joining in from Kirinyaga County. And I work with the Teacher Service Commission as a Human Resource Officer.
Yes.
And my expectation in this training is to utilize the HR competencies in my day-to-day work. Yes. Yeah.
To learn about the HR competencies and how to apply it in everyday work. So we'll also look at what is it that you do as a HR, what is your everyday activities, and how do you bring in your competencies so that you're able to drive. Anybody else before we begin? I like my classes interactive because I want to hear you, I want to interact with you because, as I said, we are all in this together and nobody has a monopoly of knowledge. We know HR, it's not a straight jacket. People say it's the easiest work to do. We used to see a lot of support and admin being taken to HR. Any other person, they're brought to HR, but now HR has become a professional. It is now skills-based and competency-based. So that is why I always want to hear so that we can learn from each other. What are the challenges that you're experiencing in your docket? How have other people experienced it and how have they been able to overcome it? So that is why we have these webinars and forums. We try to make them as interactive as possible. The next person, probably the second last, then we can proceed. 2 more. Who want to go? I can. Grace, do you want to come back? Or maybe just mute. Any other person, or we can begin? Lucy Karaoke, do you have anything to say?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm Lucy Karaoke from KBC. Looking forward to learn more from this forum, from the training. Yeah, and put it into action.
That's good, sharing of experiences and also how to break that into how we can put it into action, because actually learning and having skills that you don't apply, then you're not able to get the output. Actually, we're also going to look at what is it that we come to class to learn. You learn from this course and get the knowledge, but then how do you convert that knowledge to skills? And then also you apply your actions and your feeling and your thought into it so that then we can see the output, which now becomes the results and also the output. We will see that going to class alone is not enough. Picking a knowledge or technical knowledge, it's not sufficient until you put action into it. You apply now your attitude, or what we call the specifications of the job, both behavioral, action, and also the skills and the experience that you acquire, so that then we can see the impact. Otherwise, just coming with a degree, with the knowledge, probably at the end of it, you will not have an impact, but we will see the whole process and the cycle of applying the competencies in general, and also the HR competencies. Anybody, before I close, I wanted to have 5 people. The last person before I close, anybody who has a burning expectation that has not been covered by the rest, then we can begin so that we are able to cover the content. Yes, Millicent. Millicent, go on.
Morning.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Morning, my name is Millicent.
Good morning, we can hear you. Yes.
And I work for an INGO, and I've been in the HR space for about 18 or so years.
Yes.
And so my expectation for this training is that what we used to do 10 years ago may have evolved. And so learning what emerging trends are and how to adapt and how to integrate my fundamental lessons that I learned 16 or so years ago into what is happening now.
Millicent, you're breaking. We've lost you. Millicent, can you hear me? Can you guys hear Millicent, or is it just me? I think she's breaking. We've lost her.
Something I would like to learn more about, because we are now, most employers now are looking for soft skills, are looking for culture fit as opposed to hard skills. So thank you very much.
Millicent, we lost you at some point. Yeah, I hope you were able to capture what your expectations, what I picked. Millicent, kindly mute. There's an echo. Probably just to confirm what I picked from you, I think we lost you a bit in the middle. Is your expectation that you want to learn, for those people who have been in HR industry, let's say for over 10 years, that HR has evolved over time. And the things that we used to do have changed over time because of the change of the environment, change of the business. And now many employers are looking for more of soft skills and also the cultural fit of these employees. And we want to see what are these dynamics and the changes that are on board and how do we adapt them so that we can drive the business. Did I get you correctly, Millicent, or there's something I missed?
Yes, Rhoda, correct.
Great. I think with that, I had seen someone who had unmuted. Catherine, you wanted to tell us something? Catherine Gambi, before I close you out, then we begin.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to just go through HR competencies. They are really needed in the marketplace because HR is not the HR that was there yesterday.
Yes.
The HR has a division between the hard HR and the soft HR. So the soft HR that deals with counseling, deals with feelings and people and training, turning people into something is soft mainly. But the hard part of HR is what we seem to be concentrating our studies on. Document flow and all those kind of things, giving reports, which is mundane. So the competencies that are expected in the marketplace now need to also bring into perspective artificial intelligence that has come. So it has also endangered any tasks that are repetitive. So it's competencies that will win the day at the end of time. So it's good to be relevant. It's good to also know that you can be the next CEO if you run your things right. And I think that's basically what we need to get out of this.
Great. Thank you, Catherine, for that. I think you've touched a very soft part of this HR, where HR is not the HR we used to know, the personnel for these people who've been here around long enough, where HR was expected to do just the leave administration, payroll administration, pension. Again, as we learn these HR competencies, at a personal level, it should be able to direct you, what kind of HR do I want to be in the next 5 years, in the next 2 years? Do I want to concentrate on payroll? Do I want to do pension? And also we are also looking at, apart from having the HR, what about being agile? We are seeing organizations where they want agile staff that you can work, and flexible staff where you can work anywhere in the organization. What would happen? We have seen a lot of HR being moved from one docket to another up to operations level so that you can learn the entire organization. Are you equipped for that? Again, because of the staff turnover and the changes in the workplaces, how have you prepared your other employees in terms of the flexibility? Do you have these fixed employees that when you recruit them in this, they cannot move to another docket? So we need to have that mobility, agility, and also the flexibility among the HR, and also in terms of the employees that we are recruiting, because they are able to move and be flexible with the business needs. Again, HR, before we used to have personnel management, then we came to HR and administration. We are moving slowly to human capital. And beyond that, we also have speciality in HR. There are people who are being recruited as HRBPs, HR business partners. What is their role? It is more strategic. It is more targeted toward the business, partnering with the business. And you can find the competencies that we need of a payroll manager. It is totally different from the competencies that you need for a HRBP. Someone else who is a strategist. What defines the role? We also have organizations that have evolved, that they even have specialized dockets of talent management. What does talent management entail? What are the competencies? What are the skills? What are the attitude? And what are the organization-specific skills that you need? Because again, if you look at the workplaces, it is not any other office. If you work in a county government, you can know, or you know that working in a county government, it's totally different from working for a parastatal. We are all in government. It could also be totally different from working in a constitutional commission. If you are to go into banking, are the skills that you have in HR going to be applicable if you go to a financial institution? Probably there are more skills and competencies that you need to build on your way so that you can be able to fit into that organization and that culture, like business activity. Then the HRs we must be able to understand the numbers and how the business, for you to feel the business, you must be able to understand the business environment, and you must be able again to understand how the financials, that when you're able to see the financial report. Mary, kindly, we are requesting that you kindly mute. You are able to plug in and understand the numbers, make a narration and a story about those numbers, and then see as HR, how can you plug in to drive that strategy and the business strategy. So that's all what we are going to cover. Mary, kindly, unless you have a question, we are requesting that you mute so that we are able to follow through. So with that, that cluster of expectation, I hope we'll be able to touch on that. But before I lost it, I thought it's good that we just give that preliminary, maybe introductory. So let's go straight to what we have prepared for you so that I don't lose sight. We'll be able to cover, there are not so many slides. I have about just 35 slides that we've prepared for you. And what I normally say, and why I start by such kind of discussions, we always use the PowerPoints as pointers to what you should be able. They may be at a very high level, but we'll be able to discuss it. So when you go back, you'll get those slides from the ACHRP portal, but please try to understand what that slide talks about and see how you can apply that in your workplaces so that you just don't read. So we want you to pick the knowledge. We want you to acquire the skills. The skills and the is knowledge, skills, and also the attitudes and the ability the same? Totally, they are not the same. You'll see that knowledge is what you'll pick today, but you need to contextualize and bring it to the workplaces and see how you can apply for you to be able to gain the skills over time. And again, for you to have that ability, then you'll be able to know how to apply the knowledge that you have acquired in class, which is mostly technical training, how you put that into context and apply it, and then how you put action in it so that you can now have what we call the ability or the capability. I'm sure even starting from the very basics of HR, everybody in HR has done recruitment. How do we do our recruitments? We normally start by, what do we start with? What is the first point when you're doing recruitment? Before you send that job to the advert out or to the newspapers, what do you first come up with?
A job description.
A job description. So how you structure your job description, you'll see, even when you look at, of course, you'll have the purpose of the job, you'll have the roles and the responsibility, then you'll come and have what we call the job specs. The first thing we start with is the academics. You must have a degree, you must have a certificate, you must have a diploma in this. Then we go to other behavioral, which we call the competencies, including, then let's come back to performance management. When you come to performance management, an effective performance management system, it's able to capture and measure what you call the job responsibility, that you're supposed to bring maybe 10 accounts and you brought 20, and we can say you performed at this percent. And that one, we normally give it like a percentage of 80%, because we are measuring the technical requirements of the job. But again, we also leave some percentages. I'm saying for an effective HR management or performance management system, because I know there are some that don't have. You're supposed to measure the competences of delivery, that this person has delivered in terms of the technical requirements of the job, but how did they deliver that? So you also evaluate the competence of the job holder and the performer of that job, so that we have a balanced person who is fit for the organization and for the culture. I know you can bear me witness, there are people who really achieve their targets, but how they do it, probably they achieve the numbers and the requirements of the job by working on other people's heads. We have witnessed that, but how do we strike a balance so that we have people who are fit for the job, fit for the culture, for the organization, and for the business? So HR competency, as we've talked, let me hear from someone. What is your understanding of competences? Leave the word HR alone. And why I want to take a detour from the HR is because we are the custodian of the organizational competencies. We are the people who do the job analysis, the job evaluation. We come up with all the JD. So you must have what we call a model or a framework of all the competencies that are required by your organization, because organizations are specific. So what is your understanding of competencies before we come to HR competencies? Anyone can give it a try? Generally, what is competencies? Anyone want to give it a shot? Yes, Catherine.
I just give it a shot in the sense that when you use the word, just being a scholar, when you use the word competence, you must define it. And for you to be regarded as competent, it means you are completely, you have the knowledge, you have the skill, the know-how of how to do this, and you can practically put your knowledge into work. You see, when we talk about knowledge, there is the aspect of understanding, and then wisdom normally is application of all those. When you have the facts, are you able to understand how those facts work in the marketplace? Are you able to use that knowledge to be able to make better decisions, or to make decisions based on the facts that you have on the table, which will be able to transform the thinking or the problem from a problem to a solution? So probably that's what I would look at competency from that framework. Yeah,
that's great. So we always hear people say, she is a very competent employee. And Catherine has elaborated what that means. Competency is what is required. So we look at it from that perspective. Of course, when we study this, I also want you to have an open mind and look at, there's also this very elusive topic of knowledge management. How do you manage and store the knowledge in your organization? So because of that, we are going to look at different types of knowledge. Are there some knowledge that you can be able to tap, store, and maybe also because of succession planning and also for the continuity, you are able to store? How can you be able to pick that knowledge and store it or process it and pass it to the rest of the people? Are there knowledge that you can pass? Are there knowledge that can be stored? And are there knowledge that you cannot tap and they are just intrinsic? They remain with that person. That's when you see if this person exits, the kind of knowledge and the competencies they have, they go with it. Let's say if they're headhunted. So let's have a broad mind. And when you look at competencies, I want us to apply every activity in your JD to be competency-based, so that we talk about competency-based kind of recruitment, competency-based kind of interviewing, competency-based kind of training, that when you go for training, you just don't pick a training because it's in Mombasa and you're going to have a per diem, or you're supposed to gain this number of hours in a year. So any training that comes around, I'm going to pick it so that I'll have the training hours. That also speaks about how do we do our performance targets? Do we gauge ourselves as HR in terms of training hours? That if Rhoda clocks in for 3 hours, whether they clock in for 3 hours and they go to do other activities, they have met their targets. Or do we look at competency-based training, that you are able to look at the business needs, tailor a training, or look for that training that is specifically meeting, and then you come and evaluate what is the impact of that training and how you apply it in your workplaces. So I talked about competency-based recruitment. You have identified the competencies that are required, the skills and the needs. Then when you look for that person to recruit, you're looking for a proper fit. I say recruitment is not just putting a bum on a seat. It is competency-based recruitment that is responsive to the needs of the organization and the needs of the job. The other thing that we do, we look at interviewing. When now you put those in the JD and now you have advertised and now you have done the shortlisting, how do you do your interview? What kind of questions do you come up with so that you have a proper fit? Are you able to look at both the technical and the behavioral aspect of that job for a proper fit so that people can fit? We look at that. We've talked about the competency-based training, I've also mentioned about the competency-based kind of performance management system or appraisal system, where you appraise both the technical, the knowledge, the skills, and also the soft bit of the HR. Which other role do we do in HR? I've talked about performance management, training, recruitment. What else? Again, when you're looking at the utility of your employees, are you able to derive the maximum potential? Even how you do your placement, do you place your employees where they have the greatest competency and they can make the greatest impact in their work, so that then you decide, I'm going to take Lucy to this department and not this department because she has this requirement of the job, or she has that competence, because people are different. Even in HR, not all of us have social skills. Not all of us can create great teams. So we all differ. So that's kind of the discussion I want us to have. So just to take this, let's go. So the outline for this training, we're going to look at the transformation and the value of HR. Of course, I love the fact that we have all agreed that HR has evolved over time. And what value do you want to add to the business? We always say HR must have a seat on the table. Yes, if you're given that seat in the boardroom table, because that's the table we talk about, and you're given an opportunity to talk or to add value, do you have what it takes? Have you prepared yourself that once that opportunity is given to you, you have a solution for the business? And you can say, I can see the business has been struggling with this and this, and as HR, looking at our HR strategy, we want to have an impact on the business. So that now takes you understand what is your organizational strategy. What is your business vision, mission? Where do you want to go? What are the pain points of the business? Then you look at all that strategy and then use that to cascade to your HR strategy, so that the HR strategy you have is actually responding business needs. That your HR strategy that you have developed is not abstract. But as HR, I went and met Abdurazak from Isiolo, and I just borrowed their HR strategy. And then when I'm asked to come up with a HR strategy, it is copy-paste. I just changed the name of the organization. When we say HR is HR. For you, the first thing is to understand the background, the journey of your business and your organization. And that is why when we go to the table, our role is really to keenly listen to the other businesses and operation departments. Where are we? Because the main reason that we exist, it is because of the core of the organization. So how are we performing? What are the challenges? What is the strategic direction? And how do you plug in as HR so that the strategies we come up with HR are responsive and addressing those needs of the business so that we can actually have an impact. If we are struggling achieving our targets, what is it? Is it that our people are not skilled? Is it that they are not trained? In what areas are they not trained? So we plug in and say, we have a solution for you. I think what is missing in the finance, we have a number of staff who are not very competent when we come to Excel, which is the main software or maybe the package they use. And as a HR, you can say, I think for us to add value to this organization, we want to tailor a training on Microsoft Excel so that most of the finance team are trained and they'll be able to do that. Of course, those who've been around, you can even say, we also have a crop of staff who are not able to use computers very well, or they're not computer, they'll type with one hand and you're expecting them to capture all this data, to capture all the training, especially the people at the front desk. Do they have what it takes? Or they were just posted there because they are relative of what a particular person they were posted, they didn't have the competence. And we argue for you to have secured that job. And you are the people who recruited, you ought to have had that prerequisite training. So how do we develop this capacity? We identify the gaps within the business and then we respond to that. Then understanding what HR competencies. For us to be able to carry out our work, then what competencies as individuals, as professionals do we require? Then we'll also need to look at how do we develop what we call the HR competency framework. Of course, charity begins at home. You must be able to come up with some of the competency requirement for the HR for you to be able to do it for the entire organization. Of course, we are going to look at types of knowledge, what I was talking about, the tacit knowledge, the procedural knowledge, the explicit knowledge. Maybe you'll have the priori, posteriori kind of types of knowledge. We're going to look at different of the types of them, how they are applied, how they manifest in the workplaces, and how we can add value to that once we know in terms of our knowledge management. We're also going to look at different types and levels of competencies. We are going to have some sample questions on how we bring it home in our everyday, and we're going to look at, of course, we know how to do interviewing for checking whether someone has a degree, they have a diploma, they have a training, maybe training in senior management, the ones that we look for that, like SLDP. You can be able to check the compliance check of the Chapter 4 of the Constitution, can do all that. Then, so what about getting the soft skills and the aspect of that person? So we are going to do like a simulation of behavioral event interviewing, and then we're also going to look at compensating and rewarding productive individuals and the teams. The people with all those competencies, how they apply in their job, and how do we compensate and reward them for those who can perform above others. Then we are going to also look at, in everything that we do, we have agreed HR is evolving. How do we pick the business of what we do in HR? We look at all the HR processes, we look at all HR systems, and we look how do we integrate the competencies into the HR systems of the model so that we can have an impact on the business and we can be felt that in HR, people can feel in your organization there is a HR. How many of you have had comments like, we don't feel HR in our organization? In that organization, since so-and-so left, we don't feel HR. Have you had such comments? Have we had those comments that we don't feel HR in this organization? Molu, welcome. Catherine, you can take, I can see Molu's mic is on. Before we come to you, Catherine, did you want to make a comment? His video is on, his mic probably. Okay, Catherine, go, give it a shot. Have you heard of those comments?
Yeah, those comments are very interesting because they are in large supply.
Yes.
Largely because traditionally, people have refused to evolve in the sense that the HR office is no longer the office that you call personnel. Yes. Not a personnel manager. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the issue of personnel manager, even yes. You can see the structure, they are normally even the offices that can be a store, in some organization at the corner somewhere, that already structurally, it tells you that how the organization will take you from the way in the organizational chart, the office is. And so yes. That is, those are the organizations that you see them saying, we don't feel HR. And then people, depending on where the company is, you find that a company that is very high up there will know the role of HR. But yes. As you go to entrepreneurs or SMEs, they think HRs just hire and fire. And yes. They basically want you to fire, they want to hire. And, yes. And that kind of stuff now happens where now you need to let them also, they are the ones who fire, but you just do paperwork. You just make sure you've given warnings and you have been at your, you've been trying to evaluate to support the company. But yet a HR is actually a sandwich between the people and the organization to see the benefit existence. So those are the kind of organizations who do not, in fact, some of the people regard that HR wanafanya tu payroll, hiyo inaweza kufanywa na accountant. You see, so the accountants are made to do payroll, which is the figure part, but to explain now to people, the nature of accounting is not to explain to people, it's just for you to understand the pay slip, hizo ndio pesa tulikubaliana umekatwa tax, why are you coming to my office? The two offices are inculcated differently. So you find that they don't see value because they see, in fact, one of the organizations just say, tu ni watu tu wa maneno. And then, of course, there's also the other aspect of promoting HRs from the wrong department. There's something you have said where you have said utility evaluation, and you talk in terms of looking at the potential in people. Traditionally, PAs can be are normally given that role where to promote, they don't know where to promote them to, so they make them HRs. So umetoka kwa regulation where you've been very bad and unakanyagia watu, and then suddenly you are like having to treat people like, come, let us speak. So people don't trust you. So there is lack of trust because administrators are also wired differently and they are not really competent to be HRs. But the system long time ago has always brought administrators to HR. I think that's what I can say.
That's very good. Before I comment on that, I agree with you, Catherine, and I also want to challenge us. Mweni, you have had your hand up, or have you changed your mind, Mweni? I saw your hand that was up for long. Have you changed your mind? Probably she has. But you can just phrase it if you want to speak again. And picking from what Catherine has said, anybody, depending with how you carry yourself, if your role is just what you call the mundane roles, entries, payroll, leave administration, checking leave balances, if that's all what you can do, any other person in that organization, including an administrator and a secretary, can do that, and they do that job perfectly. And they think HR is just the soft skill of listening to people, answering their queries, and being emotional or empathetic about them. They don't see anything professional about it. And that is why we have been deemed, if you remain in the old HR, anybody can do your work. And I can tell you, for me, who has been in consultant for a few years now, majority of the people in HR consultants are not HR professionals. Some of us, we are HR blood. We did degrees, we did masters, HRP, we did everything for all this, we are HR. But I have seen a new trend that now people think HR is the easiest thing to do, and HR professionals are asleep So everybody has intruded into our space. I can tell you 5 or 6 of my closest consultants in HR, they're accountants, they're economists, they're lawyers, but they decide, oh, what I need to do is to do a diploma in HR, and I become a HR professional. And probably now, I've even had the people who have been in accounting audit for the last 20 years, and suddenly within 2 years, done CHRP, which some of us are still saying, I'll not do, it's not compulsory, I have a degree, I have NEC, so I'll not. So for them, they have done the CHRP, and now they're CHRP, and we are with them in the field and taking the bigger chunk of the consultancies. Because once they approach those organizations, they're very able to understand the economic dynamics, the trends, and the finances. And they say, for you to perform and to make an impact, they start from that very high level of strategy, then we need to tweak this in HR, and we'll be able. When you go to HR, as a HR, all what you can give the solution is, I can do recruitment for you, I can do job analysis for you, I can run the payroll for you, those supportive roles. And again, one time we'll all retire. Maybe some of us have very few years. Then with also the economic changes, some of us will be thrown out of the system because of the high cost. We'll find ourselves retrenched. We'll find ourselves a retirement, VR, all those things are coming in between jobs. What are you going to do with yourself? Will you have a payroll at home to run? Will you have an administrative leave for you to run for your home? You must be able to make yourself flexible, agile, that when you come out, as you want to hop to another job, you can make use of what you have. Again, that's why I said at the beginning, I've been in this field for the last 20 years. What else can you do? Everybody now I've seen have evaded into our territory. Which territory are you comfortable with that you can evade as well? Which competencies can you build yourself as a HR that I can also do that? Develop your business acumen. Invade their field, but very few of us are able to do that. That is when you come to our workplaces and you do a lot of report. Someone said, we do the entire work, HR sandwiches, and other departments runs with it. What happens in the disciplinary procedures for most of those people, HR, who don't understand the processes, the compliances, the legislation in terms of the labor relations and how you connect it to the constitution and all this other legislation? For you, you'll give an opinion, but it will not carry the day. Then all that you have prepared and said, we do this, it is taken to that legal officer who will give a report and just remodel all that what you have said, put it in nice words and say, this is the legal opinion. So for you, which other competencies beyond the HR are you building so that you can be agile in the workplaces? Someone said, we want to see HR who are growing into CEO's position. Quite a number of us have grown to those positions. We have seen, we can have many icons who have now evolved to HR. Recently, we have the National Lands Commission. The CEO is a HR profession. Look at what has happened in, is it Kengen? Our Kengen CEO is a HR profession. We have also seen cases of Kenya Power. The former CEO was a HR profession. KCB, we have the Paul Russos. Many organizations, but if you look at the profile, just go to their website and check the profile of that person. You'll find they've been in HR all these, but they have taken other projects that have propelled them to this other, and they're able to understand their strategy and their business, and they're able to perform. Again, even those people in government, we can see now most of the positions in HR have been left at the deputy director HR, assistant director HR. We have seen now, apart from a few parastatals, the director HR, it's now, we don't have that role. It's been left at that grade, so that the one that is above it, it's the director corporate services. Of course, they look at things like IT, the accounts and the financials. How have you prepared yourself to take up such roles? That's a challenge for us, so that as we sit pretty comfortable, a lot of people have enrolled in HR, we are many professionals, and massive people have left their career, and now they have seen HR, maybe consultancy is recruitive, so they have come into it, and they bring the business and strategic angles that we may not have. And that's why you can see in most of our organizations, you'll find HR fighting with finance. Why? They fear the numbers. And the finance are these abstract people who will just put you down on numbers. But the moment you see the finance, you think they're harassing you, you don't understand, they don't understand how HR operate because you're not able to synchronize. So we're going to look at that. But basically, I think for me, that discussion is more important for us than even the PowerPoint, because you live with this. Then we'll tell you, you will live with these PowerPoints for as long as you have paid for these courses. So you can always go and produce. But let me now concentrate on my slides. I think we have given an overview. So when you see me maybe rushing through the slides, it is because I'm confident. I've discussed about it and what it means. So as I said, someone mentioned that HR management has evolved over the years. We started from the industrial eras, how the industrial revolution started when people were working in white highlands and the farms, and they were talking about being equipped, the tools, they were using their hands. There was no technological advancement. So that is the time we used to have more of maybe labor, civil activism, where we are looking for employees, right? People were working in farms, they were working industries, and most of the work was manual, industrial eras. So what was really important at that point was conducive work environment and pay for the work, and also maybe the safety of the employees. Then we came, and now we evolved into the knowledge and information economy, where we had a lot of information, a lot of knowledge coming in, and now beside that, now we can say we are looking at the future of work. How is the work going to shape up? Now we are in the technological era, almost going into robotic era in this environment, that now technology has taken most of the roles. A lot of jobs in HR has been automated, and soon probably robots will also take. So that kind of transformation. So it does not just transform the HR, but also how we do our businesses. So we need to look at it from the HR perspective. What are the new skills that we need to learn, and how is the business evolving, and how we respond to that? Then we say employees' competencies are the key to success in this new environment, and HR has therefore transformed and are now focusing more on aspects such as talent management. Of course, someone said we more of used to focus on the hard HR, the personnel, the payrolls, the pensions, the sick leaves, the medical covers, the what else? Those are the hard skills that we used to deal with, the number of employees we have recruited. But now the focus is in HR is more of the talent management. What is the talent that the organization needs? Once we have them on board, how do we manage this talent? How do we identify the star performers, the people with potential, so that we come up with a talent pool? How do we ensure that the talents we have, we want to call not the workforce now anymore, the talents are the people that you have, because they come as a package. They are person, they have skills, they have their attitudes, they have emotions with them, and they have the capability. So that kind of package we have called the talent, how do we ensure that they're flexible, they're agile? Again, we are also focusing on accountability. Are they accountable to what they're supposed to do? So that when you talk about the performance, we no longer look at how many hours you clock in. We look at performance. What is the output? What is the results? And actually in HR now with the COVID, we can see now this is coming really true. It's not the number of hours you sit in an office. How are we able to measure the performance of an individual from what they are expected to do? So flexibility, accountability, and performance becomes the key focus in the UHR. Then we are saying accordingly, HR actions have been adapted or should be adapted if we are still lagging. Of course, the train has left the station, so as to involve people and value the contribution. So the soft aspect is we need to have more involvement of the people. We are no longer in this era where HR was seen to be the boss, the personnel. If you could see HR on the corridors, people would go run, they clock, they move to their seats. HR need to be more consultative, more hands-on, be in the business, interact with the business so that you knew what they are doing. So there's more people involvement. Of course, those who've been in HR, you could see, used to come up with a document and we come up with a policy, we come up with a JD from where we sit because we can borrow from the others. We never used to involve people, even when you're coming up with a JD. You see now when you're going for recruitment, of course, HR is the custody. We have what we call the career progression and guidelines. That probably for the people who have the career progression guidelines, it has the JDs and the competencies and the responsibility. When was it last reviewed? Did you involve the HOD? Did you involve the people who are doing the work? So by the time you're picking that and you want to go to the market, it is always good that you review it, go through it with the departmental head to ensure that this person they need, it is the person that you're going to advertise. So if there is more consultation. When you're coming up with your policy papers, your guidelines, the HR policies and manuals, performance management, it is not a HR function alone. You need to be on the ground and to involve people and hear their contribution because you need to be responsive. Of course, in the new eras, we say the watchwords in the new HR on focus are optimizing the selection. That when you go to select employees for a particular job, we want to look at optimization. How much potential do we have? How much talent do we have? What is their capability? And how do we optimize? I'm not saying maximize. It is optimizing. Because again, we don't want to exploit the employees. Then we also look at staff agility. We've discussed about that. We have heard about learning organization. Is your organization a learning organization? Or or people go to school, you come with the competencies, but there is no continuous learning. So we want to build a learning institution where learning is continuous, an everyday thing. Learning has no end. We want to look at competency development. We are able to identify the required competencies and how do you build on that in terms of training. Then how do we recognize the effort of the people who are performing? Then we also need to use employees' full potential. Someone maybe have been recruited by a HR, but when you look at how they interact, probably they just did a HR course. Are you able to actually optimize or use their full potential so that they can be able to reach? We've seen people in different professions taking a detour and moving. I'll give you an example of an institution like EABL. I think them, when they employ their employees, you'll find you may be recruited in procurement or in HR because you have those qualifications. But they sponsor their employees, I think, to about a tune of 80% of tuition fees they can do their masters and capacity development. Then you are given a 2 years period where you choose, where do you find your potential? Where do you think you can work well? I've had people coming to request, Rhoda, I'm in this department, but I feel I can thrive if I'm taken to customer service because the way I do my job, I'm able to get a lot of business. When an opportunity comes, I would really want to explore my potential in that. And you put them in the talent pool or the pipeline so that when you're doing a reorganization, these are some of the people you can transfer and then give them the capacity development they need so that they're able to enjoy their work. Because an employee who is using their full potential, they feel they belong. They feel like their effort is being appreciated. And of course, that actually translates into the terms of the performance. Of course, everybody is looking for that favorable working climate. What is the culture of your organization? How do you feel when you wake up in the morning to go to the workplace? And organization culture now, it's at the docket of HR. What kind of culture are you creating in your workplaces? So those are some of the things that we look at. Then in terms of focusing on the soft or the new HR, then all these activities are based on valuing the talents that you have and the competencies of your staff. And they may be part, and they must be part of what you call the integrated and coherent set of HR resource practices. What are your HR practices? Are they integrated? What does that word mean? Integrated and coherent with the organization. We're going to look at it further. Then how has HR transformed? We're talking about the HR transformation. What is HR transformation? And in a nutshell, we say HR transformation describes the evolution of HR functions. Many of us have talked about how we have evolved, such as the service delivery, the talent and technology are seamlessly adapted and integrated into our HR strategy, which we said we develop by cascading from the business strategy to create greater business value. We want to see HR that add value to the business. And how do we add value? By looking at the needs of the business and being responsive. At some point, HR is required to drive both the operational excellences of the business and the strategic impact. Anytime where we have a strategic or effective HR and we have major projects that are being rolled out in an organization, HR will be in charge of the change management. How do people transit and transform and change? We are normally at the center of the change management. So that is one of the competencies that we require, change management when you're driving the project. Be that there's a project of installation of a new core business system. New system is being rolled out because change involves people. It is the people who are going to be affected and who will use the systems that are coming on board. So appealing to the emotions, working with the employees so that with these changes, of course, change brings some fear, apprehension, so that people, by the time they come and now they adapt, they adjust, they start making errors and they go through the whole cycle. HR is working with them. We can see what is the cause of the apprehension. Why don't people want to move from the old, what they know that has been working, they're comfortable, and what are their fears, and how do we deal with them? Then we are able to give that feedback, so we drive the operational excellence and also the strategic, so that as the businesses are moving, we are able to work with them because we are in the HR. It is about evolving the HR role and the function to align the people strategy. We no longer, in fact, now many organizations call it the people strategy. And the challenge I always make to HR, are you sitting at that senior management table when people go for those strategic management retreats? Or are you left at the office? Again, we all have, majority of us, I can say, have what we call HR strategy. But where are you taking your HR strategy from? The first thing I always do, and when I go to an organization, is look at the organization strategy. Do we have a HR or a people pillar in your organization strategy? Or is it silent and getting lost in these other core, what we call the core pillars? Ensure we have a people pillar, a human capital pillar, a HR pillar that drives all our learning pillar in that strategy. So among the few, we normally have about 4 or 5 strategic pillars. HR might be one of it. So that it supports the whole strategy. And then once people say, and you give them targets, if HR give us this number of employees, if HR is able to train our people like this, if HR is able to do that, so you become the center and the pillar. And at the end of the day, you can say this business performance, organization performance have grown because we supported them on this and this. And you are very keen, what is it that we are driving? How do I improve? And how do I add value? So it's about that evolving of the HR load from the hard, the personnel, to the strategic role that partners with the business and functions to align people's strategy, the processes, everyday processes, and the technology with the business goals to deliver more impact to all stakeholders. Basically, you can see we are covering what. So what does HR transformation Sorry. And you're saying, what does HR transformation deliver? Once you transform, what is it that you deliver? I've just taken sample of 3 just to highlight. Of course, there are more than that. So HR transformation is a necessity for the business, and it offers different benefits. For example, they position HR as a strategic partner, that there are no strategic decisions will be discussed without HR, that the response, the role and the position of the HR will be strategic. You become a key player in the business in terms of shaping the future of the business, because you can see where the business is moving from to where it is moving to. And you are able to build the new blueprints for successful talent management. Of course, you also can participate in the stakeholders across the organization, some of them being the employees. Of course, even going externally, when you come to HR business partnership, must recognize the value of HR and work in tandem with the HR leaders so that they can achieve those strategic priorities. The other thing is you're able to unlock the capacity and also drive efficiency. Of course, cost has become something that is really real to us in business. When it comes to budget cutting, historic measures in the workplaces, the first target is always HR. Let's cut on training. See what is happening in the county governments, in the national government, and most of our organizations. I'm sure this year, with the new dispensation, we have all felt the cut in terms of the trainings. Majority of us have not even been able to achieve our CPDs. And probably that's why we're in this forum, because the training budget has been shrunk. We are no longer sending people to trainings. Probably we have seen people maybe in the private sector where even the payroll, people are not being paid by end of the month, those delays. Maybe most of the initiatives that in HR are the first to be. So when we have that HR transformational, you're very strategic, all your activities are anchored on the core of the business, then you'll be able to unlock that capacity and you drive that efficiency. Even when you're coming up with those training, how are we responding as HR? Of course, there are austerity measures that we are no longer going to be sponsoring people for training, and your budget has been cut. You have to think outside the box. For those with training facilities, you'll come up with tailor-made courses. Which are these pain points for the business at the moment that cannot wait? And probably structure with a consultant that curriculum of what you need. And you could even ask for an in-house training so that you're able to cut on budget. Of course, you'll have some backlash because people want to go to Mombasa, they want to get the per diem, but what do you do as HR? Because you want to add value in terms of the performance management and the performance of that strategy. You have to come up with skills-based talent management solutions that will still have an impact on the business at the face of the cost cutting. So we also have strategies that are rooted in skills. Most of the strategies that you come with should be skill sensitive. And we say leaders can efficiently access the capability they need to get key projects completed and empower employees to achieve their full potential. And finally, we can say it enhances employees' experience because now employees are able to perform at a better level because they're enjoying their work. They feel like their full potential is being explored. They feel like their skills and their talents and their competences are being valued by the organizations, how we align them. So employees want to see the organization making a difference on societal issues, providing them with a choice that I can be moved from this department by full potential. Where I work well, I can be placed on them. So they feel more appreciated. And we say this is achieved through a HR transformation strategy that empowers leaders to retire obsolete rules, or maybe what you used to have in the personnel to the new dispensation. And of course, this empowers leaders and they embrace the new ways of thinking and thinking out of the box. Any questions so far? You can see it's relating to our discussions. Do you have any questions? Let me look at my charts. I can see my name is Benjamin Kipsang, HR admin at Kenya Airports. During this training, I expect to understand more about HR competencies and how I can apply in my day-to-day duties. I can say Mweni was not able to speak, but she wrote, Mweni, she's saying HR and admin, Mandi Parking, Nairobi, my expectation is to learn from others' experience on leading during challenging times and being the mentor of motivation to the teams, as well as sharpen my competency as well. Otansi said that's true. Many are not professionals. I think they were saying true, concurring with what we were discussing. Hello, everyone. I'm Rose Muteshi. And those who say they don't need HR department, I say this is due to failure to understand and acknowledge the importance of HR, because HR is like the backbone of the organization. We are very central. I agree with you, Rose, that want to move to the future successfully. Then I could see a lot of people acknowledge that. Then when again, I'm in an organization where employees say they have never known that HRs talk to employees. What they had previously experienced were memos and warning letters, because we sit at the high tables not to be seen. We are still on our high horses. Then Rose again said, we can't hear you, Rhoda. You're lost, please. Can you hear me? Let me just confirm. Rose is saying you can't hear me. What about the rest?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can. So, yeah, so allow me to go 2 more slides, then we can take a pause, then I'll take some questions before we proceed. But I hope we are together. You're following? Let me just hear some confirmations.
We're on the same page.
Yes, we are.
We're on the same page. Great. When I move so fast, please just feel to slow me down. Then we go and say, just a minute. How does HR add value to the business? We have said, how do we do it? Of course, we say we need to be strategic. We need to add value. But how do we do it? We say highly effective HR. I keep on using the word effective HR, because not all HRs are effective. So for us to be HR that are worth our salt, and to be that effective HR who are strategic and drive impact into our business, that's what I mean by effective HR. And we say highly effective HR drives impact and business results. We don't just pay payrolls by 25th of the month. We don't just ensure that 100% of our employees have taken 70% of their leave, or 75 or what. We don't just ensure that the payroll transaction has been posted to the right GL. We just don't ensure that everybody has clocked in the office at 8 and left. Our impact can only be felt through, for those who are in maybe profit-making organization, business results in terms of the sales, the profitability, the numbers. We say numbers don't lie. For the people who are in government and service industries, of course, we have strategic outputs, objectives. What is it that we want to achieve at the end of the day? Those is what we call organizational results, not necessarily business. But every entity is in some sort of business. Whether you are an NGO, you are for non-profit making, you are in some form of business. So that organization corporate results, which are measurable, it is what we want to have an impact on for you to be referred as an effective HR. So we must drive that impact so that we have the organization results. And we do this by building a strategy for the HR function or department and adapting it to the business changes. You must be responsive to the needs of the organization. How is your organization evolving? And how are you building your strategy, your processes and systems in the HR to adapt and to respond to those changes? That's how your impact will be felt. Number 2, we can always be felt and add value when we come out from our high corner offices of HR, closed door, when we start now spearheading the business strategy development. When those projects comes in, you must be in those steering teams so that you can drive it. Take leadership position The positions that will always come is like change management. The person representing that, be the HR. Take a role that you are going to drive that initiative. You are at the forefront. The other thing, you drive impact by positioning the HR function in terms of what is your operating model? What kind of structures have you put in place? How are you going to fill these structures with staff? That you do all this, the operating models, we can talk about what is the performance, what is the business model, what is the competency model, what is the competency framework that you're coming up with? How is your organization structure? How is your reward structure? How is your staffing done? And all that should be focused in terms of meeting business needs. And then we have talked about optimizing the HR function budget. I've given you tips. For you, when you build your competencies, do you have to keep on outsourcing recruitment? Yet we have someone who has HR competencies that you have to hire, unless for those sensitive office, you should be able as a HR, as an effective HR, to be able to do end-to-end kind of recruitment. You should be able to come up with your training needs, that by the time you come to a consultant, you come to ACHRP or any other organization, you already know what you need. At times we go to talk to business leaders and they'll just say, we need a training on this, customer care. That's all. You should be able to tailor and sit and say, these are the competencies that we are lacking in our HR team, in our senior management team. We were looking for someone who can train us on this and this and this. So we want you to come up with a curriculum, a training program that will respond. And even before the training, you're able to see the content and you're able to add value so that whatever money you pay, you can have a return on investment. So that is optimizing your budget so that you have maximum results to what you are investing. Do you normally do what we call training impact assessment, which you can do every 2-3 years because you can do it? Of course, once we do the training, what we do is training evaluation. And I'll ask, did you like the course materials that I had prepared? Did you like my how I contextualized issues? The time management, do you think it was sufficient? Did you like the hotel? Was it impactful? By end of this day, we'll say tick, tick, tick. But 2 years down the line, having invested in this course, how has it helped you to grow? Has it addressed the needs that we had identified? That's what we call the training impact. How many people have been promoted to other jobs because of this competency building? How many people are able to perform better after being subjected to this kind of training? That's how we do the training impact. So try as much as possible to optimize the HR function budget. And by the time you go back to the board that you want another or an additional training plan or training budget, you can say, from this, the investment that we have done, you can see because the error rates have gone down, we're having more sales, staff are more responsive, the culture has improved. You should be able to demonstrate all that. Of course, for some of us, I hear a lot of comments for ground vitu ni tofauti, because maybe some of us who works in the government, the target is to utilize the training budget allocated to the last coin. Because if you still have some remnants in that account, then you are not likely to have a similar budget or a higher budget. I know it is different in the organization, but for effective HR drive, because I'm sure some of us are still young, we want to move from other organization to other, it is good that you have all those competencies, because you remember we said the HR competencies must be responsive to the organization needs and the changes in the organization. So let's continue. I think that's clear. Then we can just, any question, let me pause there. So just take any questions, any comments before now we go to the defining of what are competencies, what are knowledge, how do we gain them? And then we also look at how we build a competency model. We differentiate what is a model from the framework. Then we look at some of the guidelines for developing those competency framework, then the competency process, and then some of the importances that you have. Any question? I can see a lot of yes, yes, yes. I think that was just a confirmation that you were able to hear me. Someone had indicated that they had lost me, they were not hearing me, but now I can see. Any question? Just unmute and just maybe ask, or just a concurrence that is clear, we can proceed. We can still shelve our discussion at the end. If you're able to save a few minutes at the end, then we can take all the discussion questions. But so far, I think we are on track. Any? All right, I'll take silence to mean consensus, that it's clear that we can proceed. But I just want a confirmation. Probably I've lost all of you. Are we together? One or two answers?
Yes, we are here, Mwalimu.
Good. So let's proceed.
We are.
Yes. Then at any point, just feel free. You can always stop me and tell me if I need to actually just re-emphasize or maybe explain something. Yeah, I can see we are together. We are. So that's good progress. So to proceed, I had asked someone to tell us what is competency. Of course, she used all the words that I've used in that. Maybe we'll just read through and see now how it connects to the impact. She said that competency talks about the knowledge. She used another word, know-how, which is similar to knowledge. She talks about the skills and the abilities, or what we can call the attitude. We call them KSAs. So a competency is a cluster. It's a combination. It's a bouquet of highly interrelated, not the word, personal attributes. Because some of these attributes are intrinsic. They are within you. That is why we find your personality or your personal makeups or attributes can have an influence on your abilities to do something. Like we can take something like someone's temperament can actually affect their feelings and their thought and their action. So it is highly interrelated. You can separate them. Personal attributes. That's why you can see some people are empathetic, others are impatient, others are not social. So we talk about personal attributes. It also influences the attitude, and they include knowledge. Knowledge, we have agreed, it is what you acquire through training, through classroom, like the degrees, the diplomas, the computer skills we gain. You gain knowledge. You read, you understand, and you gain knowledge. Then application of that knowledge with time, you acquire what we call skills. And there are different types of skills again. Knowledge, we say there are different types of knowledge. We will look at like 6 of them. What are different types of knowledge? Again, skills, they are different. What type of skills are we talking about? Are we talking about social skills? Are we talking about technical skills that you are skilled in a particular level because you learned? Probably you went and did a law degree, now you are a lawyer, so you have those legal skills. Call them technical skills. You have HR skills. Then when you come to these other soft skills, they are still skills like emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence could be another level of skills. Then the ability. Once you apply this knowledge, skills over time, then you improve your capability and the ability to do a job. That's the capacity. That gives rise to the behaviors needed to perform a particular given job. That is why we say when you go for a job advert, we are looking someone with a degree in HR, with this number of years of experience, exposure in international this, 4 weeks of senior leadership training. So we are trying to combine all that. And when you look at the JD, your JD should have job specifications. All these, at times people separate the specifications of the job and the competencies, so that they are able to separate all that. So when you're looking at a JD and a job advert, kindly, those are some of things you look at. Some of us, when you learn about a particular, even building your competency framework, it is really good that when you see a job advert, always try to see how do other people advertise the job. As an outsider, when you put yourself outside, what is that advert portraying and attracting? Because how you structure it, it determines who will be attracted to that position, who is likely to apply, so that you have a competency based on a focused responses to that application that give rise to the behaviors that are needed to perform a particular job. So you can see even how we structure our job advert, our recruitment, it should be competency based and very focused and very intentional, not just rushing out, picking the JD that was there 5 years ago and placing it on the advert. We also say competencies are personal capability in the form of knowledge, your knowledge, skills, and attitude, not the word attitude. Because you can have someone who is very knowledgeable, they are very skilled, but the attitude towards their work and their colleague is what is making them not perform. All has become negative influence to the others in the organization. Of course, if we had more time, when we are studying this topic in our symposiums and conferences, we normally give case studies. And I can show you that we have Lucy, we have Jane, and we have Ken. They have the same training. Maybe one has more working experience than the others. They are skilled in this and they're specialized, but their performance differs. And then we'll give you a role play to go and determine what is impacting on these people. And then you come up with a performance management system that is able to pick what is the issue. Is it a knowledge gap? Is it a skills gap? Is it an attitude issue? Or what is it? Which gets reflected through person's behavior in the form of the action. So we say the knowledge, the skills, and the attitude you have an impact, or it's reflected, or it manifests itself in terms of the action of that person. The thought process, that when you give someone an assignment to do, to act, how do they do? How do they act? Do they act immediately? Do they buy their time? What is the thought process? Are they thinking, this is a good opportunity for me to grow? This is a good opportunity for me to put these competencies that plant in there, or this supervisor is trying to use me. It's not part of my job. So what is the thought process? And once you combine that action with the thought, it also brings the feeling. We say it, competency is a whole package. How do I feel about it? Of course, how I feel about it, how I think about it will manifest itself into the output or the results in terms of the product and the services that you are going to deliver. So that's how it differentiates. So you can relate to this when it comes to recruitment, to the training, performance management, to the reward system, even when you're coming to the PIP, when you want to put people on improvement. You must be very deliberate. What is it that you want them to work on? Is it the knowledge? Let's say they need computer packages like Excel. I gave an example. Then you tailor and you take them. Is it the skills that now you want to do the job shadowing, attach them, mentorship, expose them to that job that they can get more skills, give them more attachment, give them more exposure to a job? Or is it the attitude that you need to work with? And you can see some of the aspects like attitude, they are influenced by personal and attributes. How someone was raised, their former bosses, how they are cultured, the environment they're coming from, what are their fears? You'll be able to understand how is this influencing on their attitude and their feelings and their work and how they relate to the other people, including the interpersonal skills. Then we also say that competencies are measurable, they are observable, and they are critical to individuals. To a personal, at an individual level, of course, at a team's level, as well as the overall organizational performance. Because if one person is not performing, or maybe let's say the skills, the knowledge determines how you perform, the kind of output and the services you render, that has an implication on your performance as an individual person, and also how you grow as an individual. I always want us to remove ourselves from the organization and take yourself as a personal brand. Who are you as Abdi when taken out of that organization? When we strip you out of that role of HR admin officer, the head of HR, the HR director, if I was to strip you off the Isiolo County and that role that you're holding, Abdurazakal, just to use you as a who are you? Can you stand and say, I'm a HR professional, I'm a consultant, I'm a practitioner because I do that? It's only the environment that will change, but you'll have that competency. So it affects someone at an individual level. And then individuals makes the team. So if we have people who are down in terms of their competencies, the performance, of course, that is reflected in the entire team. And that translates into the overall performance of the organization. So that is what competence is all about. It is broad, and it needs to be looked at from different dimensions. This is just a pictorial of see how it relates of what we have explained. Capability, we have said, is the KSA, the knowledge, the skills, and the attitude, which translate into how we behave, the behavior, our actions, our thought process, and our feelings. And that determines the product, the byproduct. How many products do we do? How many reports do we do? How many activity? How impactful are we? And also the services. What is the level and the standard of the services that we deliver, what we expected? The compliance, the controls, the efficiency, the effectiveness, all comes there. Then the results is, are you being felt? What is the impact? And our impact, it is on our talents. Are you impacting on the people, not just in HR, but in the entire business, that they believe their HR build capacity? That you can even pick on an employee and say, I have realized this from your performance appraisal. And this brings the performance appraisal. How do you do our performance appraisals? What is the role of HR? Is our work to just collect and tick the box and say, we have 350 employees, the reporting we do, 250 has actually returned their performance appraisals. Or we are at 100%, 350 employees, 350 has responded and they have submitted, and we open a good clean box file. Do we go back as HR and analyze those performance and see what were the targets, what are the gaps, what are the mitigations, what were the challenges, what were the gaps? How does the employee need to be supported? That one time you can wake up and say, looking at your performance appraisal, I said that you pointed you wanted capacity building on this. How can we assist you? How can we go that? Or you can be able to go back to that head of finance and say, from the performance appraisal of your team, I have identified these weaknesses of your team. How can we work together and come up with a training so that we're able to remove these gaps? At times, you might even find that people you have within have so much skills and the competencies that they can even train for you, that you have an in-house training conducted by your internal people. You see what incentives you can give, and they will deliver for you at no or very minimal cost. So that's how you feel. You are felt that you impact on your teams, on your employees. They'll have more trust on you. And also, once you remove those bottlenecks, those gaps, of course, it will show in the organizational performance. So that's just a pictorial. Let's come back home. Now we understand holistically what are competencies and how we can use these competencies to have an impact in the entire organization. So you can be able to move from one department, you can go to these core departments and try to understand them, and then you come up with your structures and, of course, the tools we use in HR. Then let's come back home and see, these are some of the examples I'll give. They may not be exhaustive. Of course, there are others that, but we'll just walk you through as a pointers of how you develop them. So competencies can be either, I said, technical or behavioral. And that's where you said you can separate the technical skills to behavioral skills. And when you talk about the technical competencies, we say they reflect the knowledge required to perform a specific role. Like you need someone with experience in HR, someone who has done CBA negotiations, someone who has done recruitment. Those are knowledge-based or technical-based in that kind of a professional. So the knowledge HR professionals apply to those jobs that are specific. Of course, someone in sales, you'll say you must have training in sales. Those are some of the examples. But again, we have what we call the behavioral competencies. And you'll see the technical has both the knowledge aspect and the techniques or the requirements of a specific role. You might have someone is trained in HR, that's a technical competency. But when it comes to the specifics of the role, what are they going to be doing? They may need specific trainings like industrial relations, labor laws, HR business partnering, business acumen, financial skills, all those falls under that category. But when you come to behavioral competencies, they are soft and tangible. Of course, they are observable. And we say they describe the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes or the abilities that facilitate the application of now that technique. What facilitates that application to job-related behaviors? How do you apply it? It is like you have this knowledge, how do you apply? And this is where the thought process, the feelings, and the inherent personal attributes comes in. And now, these are how you behave, how you respond, how you react, and how you deliver. It is more of how. Then when you look at the technical, it is more of what. It answers the question, what. But the behavioral is how you apply that. So what is a competency model? In a nutshell, I want you to know the difference between a competency model, how you can develop one, and I want you to look at the organization as whole. And then we'll also come up how you develop the framework. So a competency model, it is a set of competencies that collectively or together defines the requirement of effective performance in a specific job, profession, or the organization. So what is that cocktail or cluster of competencies that are required for someone to effectively perform their job or profession or the organization? You look at that from a high level. And we're going to have some of the examples that we can come up with at HR. Of course, I try to mix this because there are people who are working for international NGOs. We have people from private that have had, we have from the government. So we'll try to, at a very high level and at different levels, what you can come up with. And this is not exhaustive. You can go and expand, and I'll hear examples. I want to hear some of the other strategic HR competencies that you can see or think about it. Of course, here we are using the word strategic at a very high level, organizational level. For an effective HR or a strategic HR, some of the strategic is very key word here. Competencies that you need is leadership and navigation competencies. We said we need to add value and have an impact on the business or the strategy of your organization. We said HR must be able to sit at the table and be at the center of these projects and the strategies. You will not be able to attain this if you don't have the leadership and navigation competencies, because you have to be able to navigate through the board, the directors, leadership, the senior departmental head, so that these are the key drivers of these strategies and the project, that you can work with them at the same level. So this is the ability to direct the teams that you have, either your HR teams or the other project teams that are going to be assigned to you, and contribute to the different initiatives that they have and the other processes within the organization. Of course, we talked about, someone mentioned about process reengineering. There is no way we are going to be in charge of a process or business reengineering if you don't have the leadership and navigation competencies, because you have to understand like the whole cycle of the business and contribute to those initiatives, which may be HR related or not HR related. So that is very key at a high level. And of course, for people to trust you and to believe in you, you must have what you call the ethical practices. This is soft, this is intangible, because performance and people is really anchored on trust. And trust is based on the ethical practices. So this is the ability to integrate the core values of the organization. Remember, we said strategies of HR has to be cascaded from the organizational overall strategies. And anytime you talk about the strategies, you must understand the vision of your organization. For those who are in government, they understand we must go back to the Vision 2030. Then the 5 years plan that we have to understand where your organization is anchored. And then when you come to an institutional level, apart from the vision, you must know the direction, the purpose in terms of the mission of your organization. And very key to us, what are the core values that are used to drive this vision and the mission of the organization? And ethics is all about living the values. So when you're measuring performance management and you talk about the core values, I've seen organizations that measure the core values in the performance when it comes to competencies, and they look at how do their employees live the values of the organization, because values like transparency, honesty, responsiveness, or accountability, all those ones that we have to be lived, and they are anchored on ethics. So we are looking at the ability to integrate the core values. Are you a role model? Are you leading by example? The integrity, the accountability throughout all organization and business practices, because you are the leader and the one who leads that. Then for you to understand your organization, your business, you must have what you call the business acumen. For the people for profit, we call it business acumen, because you have to understand the profitability, the financials, and the trade and the business. You must be in it and understand the metrics that impact on the business performance. For those ones in government and service industry, the business acumen is understanding your industry, how you are anchored into the vision 2030, the long run, how it's impacting on the community, the society, the people you are, the community you are serving, why you are there. What is that impact that you have? And you must understand it in that strategic term. It's one and the same. It's the ability to understand and apply information which to contribute to your organizational overall goals. And just to continue, another one, you can talk about relationship management. HR or strategic HR is very relational. Interpersonal skills. You deal with people. Someone mentioned you are the link between the management or the employer and the employees. So you must be able to push for the needs of the employee. I always tell my HR, before you became a HR, the first thing, or before you have that title of HR, you're an employee. So the employee's needs and the environment needs are very key. They benefit, you benefit. In the first place, the relationship you have with the employer, you're an employee. So you should really care for your employees and give them the very best. But then you must be able to understand how the management, the strategies are coming. What are the pain points? What are the things, that they can do? What is not sustainable? That when you're going to agitate for more pay for those who have the laxity to do that, I know in government you may not have that, you must be able to look at the business acumen, the organization, that if I was to agitate for these huge benefits and the salaries, is it going to be sustainable, or it's going to lead to people being laid off because of the unsustainability? So you deal with the senior management, you deal with the board, you deal with the unions, you deal with the employees and the external stakeholder. So you must have been able to have the skills and the competence to build the relationship. So I talk about relationship management, the ability to manage interactions, provide service, and to support the organization. You should be a stop shop where the departmental heads, the employees, they have confidence, they can come and consult, and you'll be able to have the information. There are skills we must have in this evolving HR. The HR that we've been transformed is consultation. You don't have to do a certified consultation training, which I always recommend to your employee, every HR professional, to go out and become a transactional consultant like me, looking for projects and assignments on pay. Consultation starts from within. HR, you should take and you should wear the hat of a consultant. The HR is a consultant. You are the advisor of the CEO of the management in no matters HR. You are the consultant to those employees. So this is the ability to provide guidance to organizational stakeholder at all levels. That we are thinking of reviewing the organization structure, reviewing our staff establishment. We think our career progression guidelines is outdated. The HR manual need to be revealed. You are that consultant that your opinion carries the days. On matters of HR, you are able to give your consultation, your professional opinion, which eventually I said, you can use it as a trade outside. Of course, a lot of HR professions will have the side hustles doing the consultancies as they run with their day work. And eventually, when you're able to break even, then you can decide this is the right time to jump into consultancy. And when you come with the mindset of a HR consultant, even when I hire consultants in my work organization, I always look at it from I'm the consultant. How well are they doing? You are able to put them to put them into account, to look whether they are performing or not. Are they meeting the need? Keep them at task. And then you also learn, if I'm out there doing consultancy and the client is asking for this is how I'm able to translate. I'm able to do it and I'm able, so you have the knowledge, then you keep on doing whatever you do in your workplace, you gain the skills, then before you know it, you're already mastering the same. Then you also must have the critical evaluation competencies. You must be able to look at some project, some work, some report, and be able to interpret that, relate and contextualize, and come up with decisions and recommendations by critically analyzing. That's why we have the HR metrics. You're able to look at the financials. So you're able to look at the figures and the number and the information that has come to you. You're able to interpret, and then you base your decision basing on that data and the information and give a valued recommendation and advice to your team. Just depending with where you're working, global and cultural effectiveness. We talked about cultural fit. How are you fitting? When you look at the global, you don't have to be working in a multinational organization. What is happening globally, it is affecting how we carry out our work. Look at COVID-19, it was global, cross-cutting. Right now, we are talking about artificial intelligence. It is very global. You might think, me, I'm just working on standards, I don't have that global. You must be able to contextualize and look at this from a global perspective. Sorry, I'll give you a chance. And relate. You see, like COVID-19, we thought there are only people who work virtually. Before COVID, very few of us could work virtually. There are even people to date have not gone back to the workplaces. They are still working remotely. Things that we didn't have. I can tell you now, I'm almost in my final year of a law degree and I've never stepped in a class. Virtual classes and examination, all through. Even in courts, what has happened? You can attend virtually. In the workplaces, staff meetings, they are now virtual. So that's how you must be able to look at globally, bring it to your the local level, to your organization level, then you'll be able to understand. So this is the ability to value and consider the perspective and the backgrounds of all the parties, where they are coming from. You'll also have consultants who are outside the country. They are bringing those practices. You'll buy systems that are hosted on the cloud in a different organization. So how, and this is your HR information system. So you must have that competency. In terms of communication, allow me to just go through this at the next slides, then I'll give you the opportunity to speak. Then we can take a break. Communication, how do you communicate? we should always communicate to be understood. And by the time you communicate, you have evaluated your material, you have the know-how, you have knowledge, so that in that exchange of information with the people that you are serving and the stakeholder, the communication is effective and adds value to the business. So communication is very key, because you'll always be caught unaware and you're told, what does HR have to say about this? It's not, you don't find yourself that always you have prepared and thought about this when that question comes in. So you should be able to communicate with clarity. So communication skill is a skill that you can learn in terms of building your competencies, because how you are able to justify your project, how you are able to pitch your board papers, your concepts, and the buy-in of the people is very critical to HR. You must understand that HR leadership buy-in is very key. From the other line managers, from the management, from the board, and the employees. Your projects will rise or fall on communications and the buy-in. And the buy-in manifest in the support you are likely to get in terms of the budget, in terms of the support and people rallying and people wanting to take over the projects that you have in HR. Of course, HR expertise. Here you can talk of all manners of competence, and it talks about the knowledge of principles, the practices, and the functions of HR, human resource management. Here we can talk about the talent management skills, employee relations, performance management, training skills, recruitment skills, industrial relations. All those skills that are now specific to HR now comes in what you call a HR expert. And I think we can stop there. Let me take a few questions and look at the comments. We are not doing so badly, I hope. Let me hear. Someone was wanted to go. Is that, who is with Techno? Techno, I could hear you. Do you have any, he has muted. Any comments? Let me hear your thoughts on this. So far, what's your thought on it? Is it clear? Any comments? Yes, Catherine.
Yes. Okay, one aspect is the slide on strategic HR competencies.
Yes.
It's probably the aspect here, the real meat, because it brings everything into perspective. And one of the sorrowful states that exist in this country is the young people. The young people that we have right now, the systems of the day are not bringing them into ethical practices. You see, I interviewed someone who said, you know, they studied procurement because their parents told them that iko na pesa nyingi. Na unajua hiyo pesa nyingi actually ni bribery.
You know where it comes from. We know the meaning of that.
So I'm looking at the kind of background information that we have with people like those who come from significant people who are telling them, you do this for money. So this aspect of the ability to integrate core values, you know, integrity, accountability throughout all organizations and business practices, this is the aspect that is missing in most young employees. And so you find people with this, you know, they feel entitled. So they don't even listen when you are doing the performance for them and telling them, you know, you lack ethics. Yeah. For me, I normally write off people if I ask you about yourself and your CV and you don't tell me anything about your family. And that I have noticed a lot of a certain age. You know, the generation Z and the generation Y, they have no parents. They're like Mr. Bean, they dropped from somewhere. So I ask them, where do you come from? And, you know, this ability to shut off significant relationships means that people have no form of relationship management. And if they have no form of relationship management, then to move up the scale of HR becomes very difficult for them. You see, because people will hate you, and sometimes there's that Form 34A and Form 34B that some people have to vote whether you need to move up in those electrochemical series. But the aspect largely lies with relationship management. A lot of people are not able to do that. People are not able to manage relationships from a grassroots level. It's not even that they are like that. So these aspects that you are saying, the key aspects of competencies, whether you are talking in terms of the knowledge, the skills, the attitude, and especially behavioral. Behavioral, you know, you are what you eat. So the actions that you have, the thought, the feelings that you have is a sum total of the experiences that you have in life. So they manifest funnily, you know, at workplaces. So people have very good CVs, very good technical knowledge, as you have said. But when it comes to behavioral competencies, that is the make or break point. If people are not dealt like that, in terms of being intentional to change a certain missing link, then we have a very bad, environment that of accepting that people can perform on behavioral. Thanks.
That's a very good observation, Catherine. I've also observed the same. I remember I was discussing with one of my staff in a different department, and freshly graduated from college, and he couldn't believe how it took me so many years, that it can take you 10 years to rise to a departmental head. He said that is unbelievable. For him, if he doesn't rise to a director, head of department level in 5 years, he can't work. And I can tell you within a year, he had quitted and gone to another place. Now I think he's on his 5th job in a matter of 3 years. So there's that immediate gravitation that is coming with the new generation. And how do we interact with them in the new work environment? This is the kind of generation that they'll tell you they're not interested in pension. They're not interested in working from 8 to 5. They're not interested in coming because they have what we call now, we're calling the gig economy. They want work from home. Why do you care where I work from? All what you need is the numbers, as long as I'm delivering the numbers. But when you look at the competency, what is that soft behavioral that we look for? And one thing I want you to carry at the end of the day, probably you came expecting, and I tell you, build your competency on this and this. I want us to take the HR as a whole system. Take all the duties and responsibility and ensure everything that you have is competency-based. And I like what Catherine has said. When she's interviewing these people, there are some questions she'll always pick. Because I can tell you, you'll go to an interview, and if you just look at the technical level, you will have someone scoring 29. I can tell you there was a time we had an interview, and one of the panels called this young man. He was the leading in the interview because he scored 28 out of 30. And he had first class from his Musinde Murilo degree university. And he came, the first thing he did in the morning, he came and apologized and said he has just learned news that as he was waiting for the interview, the mother has passed on. And he asked time off so that he can go deal with the issues and rush to the mortuary and come back, and he requested to be interviewed as the last candidate. And we were very empathetic, sorry for such an occurrence, a young boy. We gave him time and he came as the last candidate. Little did we know what he did. He had someone inside who will give him a dossier and all the interview questions among us. And he went and looked at the entire strategies, the figures, and had Amwa Kenya, and he answered all the questions that we had to our expectation. We were wowed. And this is a first class, and knew our organization, and with the empathy of what this young, it was an entry position, is going through He's able to even sit through the interview after sudden loss of their mother. And he's picked. And of course, when you pick such a star performer, and after the burial, the purported burial, you want to get in touch with them and you want to give them the assignment. You know, among this team that I've picked, this person will do it for me. The first assignment, draw a memo to do this. He could not even draft a memo. And that was a wake-up call. 6 months down the line, I had like 4 people tripping into my office. I sold to this young man a shirt, he refused to pay. Another one, I sold this, refused to pay. Financial impropriety. Before I knew it, he even got through, had some few scandals, and he left the organization to the shame of the people who had actually supported him. And from that point, now, apart from that technical, you can see that interview probably by assuming it's just an entry position, we had to summarily dismiss him. We may have missed the aspect of behavioral. What are some of the interview questions that you do that is able to dig out that? HR, you have to be very clear on what you look for. And ensure if you're not able to sit in that panel, your other HR that will sit, because there must be a HR in every panel, whether it's your deputy or any other officer, they must be built those interviewing skills that are competency-based, so that as other people are really smiling about this, the strategies, all that, you're able to pick those soft behavioral skills. We will look at some of those examples, and we'll look at some of the errors that we can avoid. So that's very good contribution. And I think with that, let me look at whether there are chats, then we can proceed. Comments on the chat. Joyce Washuri just joined, tuko pamoja. Thank you for that. Karibu sana, Joyce. And I like that we're not just concentrating on the slides. If you have joined in late, our discussion is actually covering much of the things that we have said, repeating ourselves, and some also picking from what we learned. So I think it is just to get and grasp the concept of the importance of the competencies as general and also HR. So Ross, you have said competency is the ability to do something successfully, efficiently, and competency as combination of skills, ability to perform, task, knowledge gained through experience, books or internet, behaviors which involve attitudes, action, knowledge. That's what I can describe a competency. Thanks, Rhoda, for this informative session. Be blessed, thanks. Very true. We should know our business circles, direction, as well as manage our interpersonal relationships. Excellent driving of the point. Learning a lot, still young in HR, but I'm learning a lot. Of course, you will realize in our forum, we have clusters of different people. We have people who sit in board in our trainings. We have directors, we have HOD, we have senior officers, we have people who have moved from other sections coming to HR. We also have other HR professionals who have been moved to other dockets, but they still want to remain relevant. And we have very young people who are just trying to learn what this HR is. So it's a combination of two, and that's why we like learning from each other. So don't worry. Whether you are young, feel part of this. That's how you build your skills, and you'll get your knowledge, build your skills, your competencies. We learn and we take. The other things I always tell people, this is a platform for you to interact, build networks, because you'll hear Catherine talking something and her experience and how she has done it in her workplaces, that you can call her. And then you say, I'm having this challenge. How do you go around it? So we are just a community of HR professionals. So feel at home. Don't worry. Joy, we are together. Ndolo, great unveiling of HR competencies. And Joyce, your great trainer, Rhoda, that one will come, been out of for a while. Corporate removers, thanks. We are all in this, and we are learning from each other. That's why I keep on calling on you. When you hear me calling, I want to hear your perspective, because we have worked in different dockets. And I don't want to leave, especially the lady who said she's from NGO. We want also to learn from you, Millicent. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear the challenges, because we are in this safety of what we are going on. What you're experiencing is what the rest of over 50 of us that are in this forum are also experiencing. So fair enough. Let me, we have talked about competency model. So that is how you come up with a competency model. And I say this is not exhaustive. you can think about, especially in this docket of HR expert. I decided to just collapse it into one because it's really technical and we really want to focus on this, the soft skills. What about building a competency framework? And we say, just from a high level definition, that a competency framework is essentially a structured process, not a structured process, to help us who are in HR professionals to develop their skills in terms of how we develop ourselves as an individual and how we build skills of other people in particular professions and their jobs. So the framework not only outlines specifically what HR members need to do to be effective in their role, but it also clearly shows how roles within HR relate to the long-term business goals and success. So what we are looking at is, what does it take to be a HR professional? Then you take that role and you have all that competencies, but then you go a step further to say the organization strategy. What is the business goal? What is our organization goal? When we look at our organization as a whole, how can we say we are performing, we are successful? Now you try to integrate the two so that everything that you do in your activity, the ultimate goal is business goals, the organization goals, and the organization success. So you bring the professional specifics. When you're HR, we talk of CHRP, the degrees, the diplomas, the industrial relations, all that, analytical skills. But how do we package that, propel the business and have the impact? So the business organization goal is very clear. It's how you link that. Yes, this is what is required to do a job. Even accounting, the people in finance, they must have professional accountancy skills. They must have degrees in finance. They must have Excel. But why are we requiring that? And how do we ensure that translate into achievement of business goals from the strategic business of the organization? So it involves identifying the core competencies of every job, which means the essential skills, the essential knowledge, the essential behaviors, and the personal attributes that relate to each role within the HR. Of course, we recognize HR is also structured. You can have HR with different departments: talent management, compensation and benefits, industrial relations or employee relations, HR, business partner, wellness. All those are structured. You can even have, and then admin, 5 or 6 structures within HR. So in any of that role, how do you relate that within the HR is a step towards creating a standardized approach to effective HR performance. And some of the guidelines when you're developing the competence framework as follows. We said that competency framework must be aligned to the business vision and long-term goals. That is the ultimate. If you lose the business vision and the long-term goals, then you lose the competency framework. It must look at the business vision and the long-term goals of the organization. It must support the business strategy. And this brings me very close to HRBP, a human resource business partner. You want to partner with the business, and that is why now, as we are evolving, some of us, we are really trying to shake ourselves out of the, someone used the word, the mundane, the routine roles of HR, so that you create enough space for you to deal with strategic matters of the business. Then, as you try to nurture the people who are below you, the people who are starters, of course, they want to learn the HR, show them how leave is done, start delegating and trusting them, have someone who can do your payroll. So you just need a few minutes to check, and then you have also developed your metrics and the checks that you can, within a short time, know whether this is accurate or no, so that much of a business leader or a strategic HR should be on the business. When you find yourself concentrating 80–70% of your work as a HR strategy on the administrative work of the HR, then you're losing it. You should be there Something like performance management is not something to over-delegate, that you delegate to a HR officer. Their work is to follow the departmental leaders and ensure that the performance management tools and appraisals have been returned. And then you have a checklist. Your work is tick, tick, tick. And when you tick all the boxes, 100%. You need to be right there when they are setting their targets and the KPIs, so that they're able to set smart targets, so that most of the performance appraisals fall on the target setting. Garbage in, garbage out. If your leaders are not able to come up with smart targets and the performance target, then you have no business at the appraisal period, because they'll have nothing to appraise. It will just be a routine work of ticking the boxes. You'll not be able to relate and see, also evaluate. So most of the time, 60% be in the core of your organization, in the project, in the strategy, in the vision, in coming up with the initiative and supporting the business. So be there in the departments when they are doing the departmental plans. When they come up with the strategic retreats that we always go, when they are doing the strategic planning or the operational plan, the HR, you are there at the center. When they are cascading that plan to individual, you are the one to support, because at times, even the departmental leaders don't understand how to set the targets. It is you to guide them, to walk through, even with the staff, including the drivers, to assist them to set. So that way, you will say you are supporting the business strategy. And then it must focus on the current and also the future needs of the organization. What are the current pain points of your organization? The current. And then we always have like 3 years, 5 year strategic plan, or 10-year strategic plans if they exist. So where are we? What are the challenges? And what are we projecting? So even in your plan, it should be forward-looking and projective, that you are supporting now, and you also want to support the business in the coming times. So you'll be very aware of the changing environment, the competition, what is happening, what are the other HR in the industry, are you in the lead in the industry, what are they doing? You are joining those HR platforms so that you can see where there's sharing of the information, you are up and you're following. So it must focus on the current and the future needs of the organization. Then it must focus on selective core competencies that are essential to that individual and business performance. This is being selective. You know what is required of a particular and what you need in a particular person on. So it must be specific and responsive. Just like motivation, competencies also differ from one profession to another, from one individual to another. You may have the same team doing the same job, but the gaps and the pain points are different. Maybe the challenge with Rhoda is interpersonal skills. It's her attitude. Maybe the problem with Joanne, it is technical. She did this training in this organization, but they never covered this area, or she never got to understand. The other one, it could be, I'm very skilled in terms, I'm very knowledgeable in terms because I have the PhDs, the masters, but I lack the skill. And even when the people are coming to the workplaces, you'll have even people starting at entry levels with degrees, diplomas, PhD, all the courses you want in this world, name it. They have that knowledge, but they don't have the skills because they spent all their years in college and never looked for jobs, opportunity to work. So they're coming at an entry level with a lot of knowledge that is current and relevant, but they have not applied it. So they have not gained the skills. They have not gotten the capability and the ability to perform. Then you'll find another person in the same team lacked the school, the knowledge. Probably they were not able to advance their studies because of various reasons. It could be school fees, it could be anything. But they came at a very young age. So they have learned the skills on the job. They have developed their capacities on the job training. So they are very good. But the only thing they miss is the knowledge. So how do you match the two and how do you develop? Their training program is totally different. Their intervention measures is totally different. So it must be focused on selective core competencies that are essential for that particular individual. And also, what is that business needs that we need to address? Then it's generally based on the following 4 tiers. If you relate these to the HR competencies that will show, of course, the first tier is personal attribute. The first person who walks into your office is the person, is the individual. What is the personality and personal attributes of Rhoda? Such as honesty, where Catherine was saying, these are the things that I want to dig out. Beside the knowledge and the whatever you are giving me, what is your personal attributes? Are you honest? Are you likely to be committed? Are you likely to take personal responsibility to grow within the organization? How is change likely to affect you? Once you move from the personal attributes, then you come to the leadership and management skills, depending with the level of that employee. And we say leadership and management skills that enable HR to motivate people and manage operations and also the task. Because as much as you want to coordinate, you want to control, you want to plan, you want to organize, which are management skills, you must be able to influence people and motivate people so that they can give you what they have to achieve what you need. Then the third tier is cross-cutting competencies. When you look at, I said organizations differ. And that is why when you learn to a new organization, learn the culture and the organization. There are competencies that are organization or trade or industry specific, such as ethics, accountability that all staff members need. And what are these cross-cutting? And mostly you'll find this in our core values. What is that competency that is required for every staff who works in the organization? The core values, such as ethics, whether you're in HR, you are in accounts, you're in finance, you're in communication, you're in customer care, we all need to have what we call ethics. They are the fundamentals. They are the building blocks, the accountability. That's why we have performance management so that all the staff members must possess. So even when you're coming up with your training program, what I always find very useful, apart, of course, we have the TNA where everybody will feel, and most of them, they'll feel the technical skills that are required of the job. You need to sit back, evaluate the performance appraisal, the training needs, and see the soft skills that are cross-cutting that you need. You can decide every year, I'll be taking 2 courses that are cross-cutting. One of them is like the leadership development courses, the SMCs, the SLDP, and you say, every year I'll be training 4 senior managers in this. Some in the supervisory, others in the senior leadership, others in the strategic leadership. And I have this number of nominees. Then you put people in order of priorities, and then you can say every year, then you'll be slotting and nominating them. You might also find that a lot of employees have taken so much loans, they're struggling financially, they're having a lot of loans, maybe things like people are struggling. You can see there's a lot of pecuniary embarrassments, and decide, I think there's a cross-cutting need in this organization, and you tailor a course of personal financial management, expose it to all the staff. If you are many and you are distributed in many locations, you can say, I'll have cohorts 1, 2, 3, so that when I call on this team, then the others go to the back to the ground, and you roll it off and you run it the whole year. If you find your supervisors are struggling with performance management, or you have introduced a new team, or staff are struggling, I say performance management system must be trained like every 3 years. Organize for a cross-cutting team to all the employees, all the people, whether virtually now you have the virtual, whether it's 1 hour at the departmental level, those are cross-cutting competencies that you can see. You might find there are some gaps in our management team, the way the senior managers, the line managers are relating with their employees, and you decide, I'll take them for a course like emotional intelligence, disciplinary, interviewing skills for maybe people who sit in those cohorts and the task. So those are the cost cutting and some of the ways you can approach it. Then there are those role specific competencies, like you have come to learn the HR competencies. You might see a training for industrial relations and say the people who are taking part in employees relations or in this department, they need to be exposed to that kind of training. So those are the 4 tiers at personal attributes, things like honesty, commitment, values, leadership and management levels, cross-cutting, and also the role. Of course, again, that is not exhaustive. I'm sure if you read widely, you might also find other tiers that can come up in terms of our learning. But those are the ones that I was quick to identify. Let's look at the competency process. Of course, the competency process, we are looking at how we do the whole cycle, because I really want us to relate it to the HR systems and the processes. So the first step is you clarify the organizational strategy and context. Organizations are different. So I always say, understand your organization. Whenever you land into a new organization, look at the organization strategy. Know their vision, their mission, their values, and where they are headed. Then you can go straight to the people pillar, maybe the HR strategy, and say it, where has HR come from? Maybe the current and the previous one, where were they targeting? Then what is it that I can improve gradually? And then what are the changes that gradually I could introduce? So you must have a clarity of the organization strategy and the context. Contextualize. Contextualization means what environment are we operating on? Because the environment shapes what you can do and what you cannot do, so that you are able to actually apply yourself appropriately. The next thing, for you to be able to move to that direction of that organization, you need to identify the competencies through the competency model we talked about, competency identification. After that, now, once you identify the various competencies in various roles, you generate the competency model, which now you keep on validating, refining, and implementing and improving over time. When we are at the level of competency identification, we said you do what we call the job analysis. Analyze work roles and the processes. Understand them. Gather data through consultative forum with the people who are working. Then also employ or embrace what you call the behavior event interviews to understand the behavior that is relevant to that role or an event or performance of a job. And you'd use this through focus groups. You can go to our departments and you say, I'll pick this person and form these task forces or focus groups because they understand the processes. These are the people with the data. These are the people with the information they'll be able to feed you. Then you conduct benchmarking study, call your colleague and say, we are working in the same industry. How have you been able to handle this? Could you share? And then you compare and you tailor it for your organization. I hope we are together so far. Let's go to the importance and benefits of the competency framework. What do you gain from coming up with all this? The first thing we say, a competency framework means it's a means by which organizations communicate their behaviors that are required, the behaviors that you value as an organization, behaviors that are recognized and they are rewarded with respect to specific functions. So once you are able to come up, it's just like the career progression guidelines. How does it guide people? When you look at it, employees are able to tell, for me to rise from one rank to another, from one grade to another, these are the competencies and the skills that I need, and you're able to prepare yourself in advance. So at an organization level, even by the time you have new recruits and people in induction and people in our organization, as a HR, as an organization, you are communicating the expected behaviors from your employees, what you value, what you recognize, and what you reward, and what they should shy away from. The other thing you do, you ensure that staff in general have a common understanding of the organization values, expected excellent performance behavior, and this must be linked even to the training, the capacity, and also be reflected in the performance appraisal system. That at the end of the day, this will be observed, this will be measured, this will be rewarded, or this will be sanctioned or will be maybe punished. Then we say a well-defined framework allows HR to become vital contributors to organization success through business partnership and workforce leadership. Now you can have a seat at the table because you are vital and a key contributor to the organization success. You can confidently partner with the businesses and you become a workforce or a human capital leader. Then we say the competency framework becomes the basis for all HR functions and serves as the linkage between individual performance, departmental performance, and also their business performance. You will link everything into competency framework. And then it serves as a foundation for competency-based HRM staff recruitment, functions like career development. It becomes your foundation for training and development, performance feedback. Now you can have discussions on the feedback that are focused, that are objective, and give that feedback. Management, and also the retention, the succession planning, because you are able to predict and plan for the succession for the roles, for the current roles and also the future roles. Then it also gives you an advice or a focus or a foundation for compensation and benefit management, because you have already communicated what will be valued, what will be reinforced, and what will be rewarded. So they are all tied. Then as a continuation, this is just a pictorial picture of how a HR management framework based on competency, or what we call HR management framework that is based on competence. From what you see here, I had asked you what you do. You are in HR. I hope you are all in HR. Any role that is in HR, we want to put competency framework at the center of everything. That we stayed, we must start with a business strategy. Then anything that you do, that it is in the effective strategic HR, need to be all founded on competency framework. Be it the reward management, the career management, because people grow for having performed what is expected, training, performance, recruitment, and selection. And once you put all that together, then you are sure to achieve the business results and you'll have an impact. And we're just saying shortly that the competency framework will be the basis for all HR functions and serves as the link between the individual performance and the business results, as we can see in that, just pictorial for just our understanding. So whatever activity you do in your HR, always ask yourself, is it competency-based? You can go narrow down even into how you tailor the training plans, the training execution. When you come to recruitment, at the point of the JD, when you are interviewing, we look at some of the sample questions when you're interviewing and you see how it comes on. Knowledge, I think someone had explained what knowledge is. We said it's just information a person have in specific content area, and it refers to know-how, the knowledge to the practical or theoretical understanding. What is the practical or theoretical understanding of the subject? We said we can have people who are very knowledgeable, they talk a lot of theory, but when they come to application, there's a total disconnect. Of course, I'd promised to talk about some of the types of knowledge, and the main purpose I brought this is for those who are trying to deal with knowledge management, then you understand which knowledge you can tap, how you can tap it, which one do you look for. When you hear people are headhunting, it's because maybe some of the knowledge you're looking for, it is just inherent in an individual and attached and cannot be tapped until that person is there. Then it will also show you why it is good to document some of this knowledge, to store it, and probably come up with what we call the standard operating manuals and the procedure, just on how to tap it, but on a very high level. We'll not go to the academic level, but just to have, so that when you sit on the table, you're knowledgeable. Let's look at some of it. So the first, we have about 7 types of knowledge, if I'm right. Yes, 7. So the first one we're going to look at is the tacit knowledge. I'll go at it very highly. This is the knowledge, it's the personal knowledge that resides in an individual's head. It is just in Rhoda's head. You cannot take it away from her. It is her. The way she communicates, the way she manages her people, it is just so inherently, maybe probably shaped by personal attributes and high exposure. So we are saying tacit knowledge is the personal knowledge that resides in an individual head in the form of experience, the know-how, the insight that they give into something, and how they have mastered the expertise. It is difficult for competitors to copy because it is only shared through socialization, the way we are doing it, interaction with the individual who owns that knowledge, e.g., being a good manager, being a good communicator. Of course, personal attributes really plays a big role on that. When it comes to explicit knowledge, we say it is the knowledge that can easily be articulated, codified, that means put into writing and be stored. It can easily be accessed. It can easily be verbalized. And we say it can readily be captured from that individual, maybe through recording. You can store it and it can be shared. You could also ask people, like one of the practice I do when I send people for training, one of the things that I do, they must bring a training report. Go and write a report of what you learned, and then we have an online portal where that report or the whatever, then they are stored. So anybody in that department or need that knowledge, you go to the knowledge portal, you can go click and go through the slides and see what these people learned and maybe how they are going to apply it in the workplaces. That is also very good when you come to maybe return on investment. You can go back to that report and say it was very helpful. You know, when you're coming from training, and it will enable me to do my report much faster than I used to do. So they can come back and evaluate, did that training actually help you with that you saw after the training? So its transfer does not require the interaction of individual. For example, basic procedures that are quantifiable, easy to observe, and are available to all the employees. The procedures, like the leave procedures, once it's codified, anybody who is coming in, even the young tax, they can be able to read and see. For you to apply leave, you go through the departmental, you complete a leave form, go to the supervisor, then bring it to HR, then HR goes to the system, post all that. That's very easy to remember. When it comes to implicit knowledge, this is the knowledge that is that comes out of the application of this explicit knowledge that you have learned. You have learned, then you come and apply. We said learning is one thing, acquiring knowledge is one thing, but applications is the implementation of that knowledge. So application of what we learned as the explicit knowledge, it is now what comes to the implicit knowledge. I can teach you how to complete the leave form, but until you do it on your own and you perfect, then it remains just a mere knowledge. So we say, although it can be difficult to document and capture, it remains shareable and also transferable. Then declarative knowledge is just declarative. If I say, it's something that you cannot be able to demonstrate, I can say, it is happened to be a thing, an event. If I say today is 8th of July, I've just declared, is it not 8th of July? It is. So it's just declaratory. It can easily be learned by following the calendars. It can be verbalized and it can be documented. But it's more of a subject, a thing, or an event. Like knowing Kenya is in East Africa. If you tell me how to prove it, it is knowledge that we know. It's just knowledge, general knowledge. If I say William Samoei Ruto is the president of Kenya, it is general knowledge. It's an event. It's a subject that we all know. Then procedural knowledge, it is knowing how to do something. Procedural. It is a knowledge of knowing, you of course know what, but also you know how to do something. It is knowing the procedures of something. It is the ability to exercise or execute specific actions to solve problems or perform a task, and needs time and experience to master over time. It's what you acquire, and then you are able to do it flawlessly. Then we also have what we call the posterior knowledge, which you can read. Posteriori knowledge is a theory of knowledge that is commonly used in philosophy. When you come up with a philosophy, a theory, a concept, then that's what you call the posteriori knowledge. And this is normally derived from a sensory experience, that you know this is what is likely to follow after an occurrence. So it points to certain concepts that cannot be justified or understood independently unless they are backed by some evidence. But there is a possibility, or there is a theory, or there is something that is likely to follow if you do this. Then finally, the priori knowledge, which points to certain things and scenarios that are considered facts without holding any evidence. If I say 1 + 1 is equal to 2, It's a fact. But how do I prove it? How do I prove that 1 + 1 is 2 and not 11? But we all know that it is 2. So the justification of this knowledge simply comes from rational thoughts. For example, the conclusion of 5 + 7 is 12 and not 57 is proved to be factual, even though there is no tangible evidence that can be used to prove claim things. I think some of you will tell me, if I give you 5 sticks and I give you another 7, count them, there will be 12. But no tangible. But it's a fact that we live with and we know. Then what about the levels of competencies? Different levels of competencies. I can see time is going, but we are not so far badly. Let's see. So technical, we have several. I've picked just some 4 levels of competency just to relate. It's just related to what we had. The last time we had 2, we had technical and behavioral. But now here, according to Daniel Katz, in his book, he classified competences into the following areas. So depending with the author and the source of your research, you may have more than. For me, he had 4. The technical and functional competences we have explained. These are knowledge, attitude, and skills related to technical functional expertise required to perform a job. Clear. Managerial competences. These are the KSAs required to plan. Of course, these are the roles of planning, organizing, coordinating, mobilizing, and utilizing of managerial. The human competencies are the soft that we use to motivate, to utilize or optimize our employees, and to develop the talents that we have in terms of human resource. Then the conceptual, it's the ones that you think at abstract levels, and you use your thinking to plan, to focus, and to project the future happening of the business. Then I had promised that we can look at some of the examples of behavioral event interview. And we say a good example of a behavioral event interview is a job interview. When you are interviewing, like Catherine said, in a job, it could be an entry job from outside. It could be a promotional interview. It could be performance appraisal interview when you are discussing on performance and giving feedback, or it could be just a feedback interview when a supervisor or a HR is giving feedback to an employee. I know one of the hardest things we have is giving feedback because of how people are going to perceive it. People are not receptive to feedback, or we are afraid how people will look at us if you were to give a negative feedback. So this is just a simulation of what goes through this and some of the questions you can borrow when you're doing these interviews. So we say behavioral event interview could also be referred to as the competency-based interviews. Because now we want to test, we say technical is not hard to measure, but what about the soft behavioral? So that's when the competency comes, and we can always brand it to be competency-based kind of an interview. So these are some of the features of a competency-based interviews. One, it is structured type of an interview. It is intentional, it is deliberate. And the questions are focused on disclosing examples of the behaviors of the past, because it means past behaviors are likely to be replicated. How you behaved in your other work and in your other life, we are all human and you are likely to bring that on board. So the process of interviews is intended to disclose specifically and in details, depending with how deep you want to go, examples of behaviors of the past. And if you ask a very broad question, tell us about yourself and your experience, I'll just tell you the beautiful things you want to hear. And I will narrate your JD the way you expect it. But when you understand the role that I'm coming to do in an organization, you can go to specific roles and drill down so that you get how this person has behaved in the past and how they are likely to behave. It is designed based on the principle that past behaviors actually predict future behavior. Candidates are most likely to repeat these behaviors in similar situations in future, as you're hiring them, as you're promoting them. Has a high level of validity, and also they are reliable. And it's equipped with a standard scoring system that refer to behavior indicators. And here we use the acronym of a STAR, because the approach to the behavior-based interview, we look at the situation. What was the situation like? So you want to bring a specific situation that is required of a job into that interview. Then come from that situation, I have a task in hand that they're likely to perform, or they're likely, or they're intended to accomplish. With that, then you bring the action into it, and then the results. So once you combine the four, the situation, the task, and the action, then you are able to see the results. So we say, for S, what is the situation in which you are involved? It's a very specific question. What were the tasks, or what was your role in that whole situation? What action did you take as a Rhoda? And what were the results? At times you may go further and say, in hindsight, what could you do differently? Let's look at sample of the question. This is just a pictorial for us to, I think when we see, we remember. So when I talked about the situation, you can ask questions like, can you explain the situation to this panel? Again, you can go and ask, where and when did the situation happen? Because you're trying to contextualize. Then you can go still and say, what events led to it? Still drilling down. Who was involved in this situation? Was there a work colleague? Was it a supervisor? Was it a customer? You drill down. But then when you want to take them into task in terms of what were their action, how was their response? You'll ask questions like, what task were you supposed to do at that time? When that occurrence, maybe I was on duty, I was the HR, I was the head of HR. Then what did you actually do at that time? Since probably it was not one of your responsibility. And how did you do it? And what specific steps did you take? And who else was involved? No, I had to involve the board members. So you're looking at even the consultations, the reporting and all that. Then in terms of the results, to actually connect all that, you have picked the situation, the action and how it responded. You want to see what was the end result. What was the outcome? Can you tell me the results of taking such action? What specific outcome were produced by your action? That way you have drilled down into, in an interview, to drill down whether, if someone was lying, you'll be able to pick in one of that in terms of the consistency and how they were able to handle. Those are simulation questions. You can at times decide to give a simulation kind of question, whether it's written or that before the interview. Sample questions. If you want to, now I've picked some, you can see that I keep on changing the competencies because they vary from position to position. We want to look at some of the questions in various competencies. Let's say in your model or your framework, you have this competency, maybe in self or persistence. What are some of the questions you could ask when you want to test someone's persistence? Of course, I don't expect an effective HR to ask, are you persistent? In a scale of 1 to 5, how do you rate yourself as persistent? If they say 10, you score 10. Ask some intelligence questions like, in the process of selling, you're sometimes not successful in securing a new transaction. Can you tell me about 1 or 2 situations where you repeatedly failed to get a new client? What specific steps did you take? What was the results? You're basically testing their persistence. Even those who give written, you could decide to do that. It makes the person think on their feet. Then when you want to test leadership and how someone can motivate and influence others, you could ask a question such as, can you describe 1 or 2 cases in your effort to obtain new customers? What did you do? And what were the results? How they are able to influence and to bring people on board. And probably, had you had a project that you needed the senior managers or the board input and buy-in, what was it? What the scenario? What did you do? And what happened? And in hindsight, what would you do differently? Then interpersonal, you know, when you say in a hindsight, what you could do, you're also trying to pick what are the strengths and the weaknesses of this individual. When you want to test interpersonal understanding, you can ask, can you tell us about a situation where you faced a client who was disappointed with your product? What was the situation like? What specific steps did you take and what were the results? So maybe someone who does not have good interpersonal skills will try to blame the client who was fussy, blame the procurement, blame the sales team, blame the service, blame the manufacturing, that kind of, then they don't take maybe the accountability. A final question maybe on managerial, on planning and how someone does the organization. In working, we often face a number of priorities that may be tackled at the same time. Can you tell me about one or two actual cases where you have faced such a situation? What did you do and what were the consequences? Of course, apart from you interviewing, for some of the young people, I'm also training how to answer such interview questions that you are likely. I've gone to an interview and one of the questions was, they told me, listen to us very carefully. And then they were able to outline 10 assignments. You wake up in the morning as the head of HR, you realize that your deputy is not in, your payroll officer has fallen sick, the other one has a sick child, and they call in sick, and it's sick, and it's on 25th, you're supposed to pay the payroll, then their directors are traveling. So they gave me like 10 activities. And they were telling me, in the order of priority, can you tell us what you will start with and what will follow in a rank of 1 to 10? And I was able to respond. You were supposed to respond. First, I'll do this, and then you justify why you'd start with this and not this and this. That now is what I can see they were trying to really test is my planning and organizational skills. Very quickly, still in behavioral interviews, of course, just like we have errors in performance management, we also have errors and biases when we come to interviews. And we look at some of the 3 errors and how they manifest themselves and how as HR, we can be able to avoid them. So the first error or bias that is likely to happen when you're interviewing, and we should really avoid, is the bias of first impression. That Rhoda walks in and the way I present myself, maybe I'm well-dressed, you forget about everything, the competences, and you see, right, she looks like a former HR, or her name is like the former HR. And then you overshadow everything that I'm going to say and also the competencies. And you remember we are pegging our interviews, our talent management, our recruitment on competency-based. So the interviewer might make a snap judgment about someone based on first impression, whether positive or negative. Probably I come and introduce myself and say, oh, that one, those are bright. Oh, that one has a first class. That clouds the entire interview. Of course, I gave you my personal experience with that young man. Then, for example, letting the fact that the candidate is wearing out of the ordinary clothing or has very heavy regional accent to take precedence over the applicant's knowledge, skills, and abilities. So you are overclouded. We should always avoid that error and bias of first impression. The other one is just like performance management, the halo effect. The halo effect occurs when an interviewer allows one strong point about a candidate to overshadow or have an effect on everything else. For example, knowing someone went to a particular university like Strathmore, USIU, or Kampala University or MKU might be looked upon favorable, and everything the applicant says during the interview is seen in that light. Probably he forgot, but he knows what he's saying. You're even trying to answer for them. And finally, the contrast effect that majority of us will have. For example, a stronger candidate who interviews after a weaker candidate may appear more qualified than they are because you are coming from a contrast. Someone who was too weak, then you have someone who is able to answer the questions. So you might end up giving them too much marks, having come from a very weak candidate, or vice versa. We start with a very strong candidate, then when you get a weaker one, you become so punitive. Of course, the averaging of the panelists marks normally would reduce such biases. Note taking during the interview is very essential, because you need to train your panelists on how to do the interview. Some of them, they'll just be carried by the debate. And once you are coming to the end of the interview, it's that's when they remember, I didn't score. I don't know whether some of us have experienced that. They didn't score anything. They were just carried away with the candidate. They were not writing no notes, and they have 10 questions that they are to score. So a reasonable period of time between the interviews may alleviate this. Allow and train your people to take notes so that you don't end up having panelists who are asking, what did you give him on question 1? So you're relying on what the other person saw, not what you saw. Always, even as you're arranging for your interview, and ensure you have the first brief. I always do 15, depending with how people, that if you're having a very new team, about 20 to 15 minutes brief, take them through the questions. As you divide the questions, brief them on how to score, and ensure you give them a notebook and a pen, because some of them will just walk into your interview with a pen and ask for the score sheet. And tell them, always make notes, because those are documented. In fact, I ensure all the results are signed before you leave the interview room, so that you don't have that. Okay. We are almost coming to the tail end. We have about 10 more slides to go and 4 minutes to go. But I'll rush through. I know your weekend is very crucial for you, but I think this slide, we will be able to finish a slide per minute. I know it's because of the discussion we are bringing in, but now it's clear. Now just integrating. Now we want to see how we integrate the competencies to effective HR system, the entire HR system, and how we integrate the competencies. So as we said earlier, just to reiterate, that competency is the sum of skills, knowledge, abilities, attributes, attitude, experience, personality traits, motivators, what motivates you and drives you to work. And once an organization maps the competencies through the models and the framework a position needs, they can be used to find stronger hires, make more informed development choices, and deliver necessary training to fill skills gap in current and future roles. This framework integrates into hiring, the leadership and capacity development, performance management, and much more that we do in HR. I'm reading because once I find that we have discussed that, it's just to ensure that I don't leave anything out. Then we say competency framework, which we have looked, effectively define the skills, the behaviors, the soft skills an employees need to succeed in a specific role and in a specific organization. And again, we say it serves as a foundation for people-driven performance management, people-driven hiring and selection, communication, and team building. So competences talks to people, and everything is people, all skills driven. That's how we integrate. And this is just a pictorial of what we've been saying. That we want to look at strategic alignment and coherence for us to be strategic and effective HR. So we start from looking at the organization, as I said, the strategic needs and the context, vision, mission, values, and the strategic objective. And I said, ensure one of the objectives of strategic pillar is human capital, people pillar, or learning and development pillar. You must be here so that you are able to work with the rest. Of course, you deal with competency management in your staffing because you are responding to the strategic objective, in your training, in your performance management, career management, how people grow, because you want to grow that young person to a leader. You want to look at the person and the skills and the reward management because you have already communicated what you value, what you want to reinforce, what will be rewarded, what will be sanctions, and what we need. So when you come to, of course, staffing, when you do your HR planning, it is responsive to the needs of the business, and your recruitment and your selection likewise. Training, we are talking about competency development training. Performance, you look at the individual and also the organization. Career management is the mobility, agility, the flexibility, and the rotation of the employee. Reward should be both direct and also the indirect. So we say once you contextualize the strategic plan and your planning, then you center every activity that you have into competency management. then your roles as the HR manager become competency-based HR. Then that also influences your policies and the legal framework and all the tools of HR. Because what is HR policy? It talks about staffing, training, performance, all that are centered around competency. And we can see with that, your organization performance and organization excellence, that's now how you add value as a HR. Again, just to wrap it up, we are coming to the very strategic competency-based HR system that we have looked. You can see everything now is synchronized. And we say in a strategic, we are very strategic because we want to impact on the business. The moment you want to impact on the organization and the business, we are strategic. So I keep on using this term intentionally. So we are saying in a strategic competency-based human resource management perspective, all HR management practices must be based around the concept of competency. And it is therefore used as a central element of human capital management within that organization. And we say that the competency-based approach is useful for staff management as it not only identifies essential competencies, but it also develops them into strategic resources that are needed by the organization. And finally, we say staff competencies are crucial for enabling the organization to capitalize on its strategic choice, and it serves as a central element in managing an organization human capital. And that brings me to the end of what I had prepared for you. So now, just in time, I've just gone ahead with 10 minutes, but you remember you told my 10 minutes at the beginning. So I'll be open to questions. Any clarification? Kindly. Angela Mikali, welcome. I know you've come in almost late, but I know then we will tell you that all these notes and the video recording, you'll be able to access it through our portal. As long as you have registered using the ACHRP portal. Once I think we are done with this, Mr. Den will be able to post and you'll be able to access those notes and also the video recording as we go with the slides anytime at the comfort of your desk. Can you spare 5 minutes more for the trainer to close up the remaining issues without rushing through my thoughts? It's okay. We have finished. Now bring me back to that slide. Let's go back to it. Question, open forum. For me, I think I've gone through what I'm just trying to go through your charts to see if there's something I've closed. Oh, sorry. Any question? That's what I had prepared about HR competency. Let me hear from you. You can just unmute your mic. I think you have the powers to do that. Ask your question, make your comments. If you're not able to unmute, you could just type it on the chat. I'll see and read it to the rest. And I think it was my privilege and honor to have interacted with all of you in a cold Saturday morning. Now it's even warmer. And I hope I've been able to meet the expectations that you picked in the morning. And I hope that you've been able to pick something from this. So I'll give you a few minutes for your reaction, your comment, any point of clarification. Anyone just unmute? Yes, Catherine.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bias in the interview process. And because people are actually interviewed by people and not robots.
Yes,
so
yes.
What would be your guidance? Because this is one of those aspects that I'm looking at those 3 areas.
Yes.
First, of course, first impressions and the people that you find making up panels. Yes. Maybe the best thing is as a guidance to HR, the critical roles of the panelists. You know, sometimes last minute when someone comes to your office and just tells you, oh, I need this kind of person, and then they chagua themselves. You know, you sit there as HR, but they've already done it. Now, the example you gave us, for that young person, even killing his own mother and putting the mother maybe in the mortuary. With young people, normally such things are discussed internally. You see, there's someone who had wanted that person to get a job, and so they gave them the secrets.
Yes.
You know, this is what they'll ask. This is what in your practice and experience, what would be the guidance of what makes up a competent panel? So that even, because I normally, you'll give people notes, you'll give them papers, you'll even give them lead questions in terms of what they need to ask and what is achieved. And then you just find their notebooks are, they have drawings on the notebook, like they wandered away. And so these three errors, because you're looking at people who are competent, I'm looking at incompetence. It may not be as easy to pick out in an interview because of all these errors. But what would be your take on that?
Thank you, Catherine, for that question. What I have seen, again, we say the organizations, the politics, the environment is different. What has worked for me is I'm very deliberate when I come up with my HR policies and procedures. And if you are to actually, even those in public service, once you get what we have from the Public Service Commission, you have the latitude to tailor it to your organization. And once you understand your organizations and the weaknesses, ensure you try to close as many gaps as possible. You may not be able to tie them 100%, but you may be able to close most of them. One thing I've done is that recruitment is HR driven. Whether there are other interventions from other quarters and high, in the policy, it is HR driven. And I've come up with policies such as, in my organization, if you sit in the shortlisting panel, you don't sit in the interviewing panel, so that you're not able to see an application, because we are Kenya, we are society, we are communal. You're not able to sieve through the shortlisting to the interview. And the shortlisting panel, again, like, because of the transparency in government, they must write shortlisting notes that if I'm called by a board member or a particular person, that Rhoda, why was this person not shortlisted and he qualified? I can quickly say the criteria for shortlisting was 1, 2, 3. This employee did not this candidate did not submit probably this, a certificate of good conduct when they were applicable, or didn't have a professional course that we needed. There is a reason why they were not shortlisted. Because you can imagine when candidates can go to court. So, and the panels of the shortlisting, they must sign their minutes. Establish very good criteria. We have how they do it, then they sign off. Then the panel that sits in an interview, we've made it the minimum can sit in an interview is a panel of 3. Of course, from the entry level to probably senior management. Of course, for the senior leadership, like the first 3 grades, probably will go to up to a board level with a more diverse interview. So for the more common ones, from middle to the entry, there must be a minimum of 3 panelists in a panel. One has to be a HR representative. The other one must be a representative who is on a higher grade from that recruiting department. And the third one is an independent party that I will select depending with the competencies and their experience and the knowledge of what. Again, you have to come up with interviewing tool yourself. You have prepared all that, the paperwork they have, and the person who is coming from the department will ask the technical questions, and their HR will ask the HR behavioral question, like so. So you'll be able to close most of those gaps. Again, continuous training on performance appraisal, interviewing skills is very essential. They will understand where we are coming from. Of course, you may be able to get it 70% or 100, but we are looking for that improvement. You are able to make plans. That's how I'd answer to that question. Any other burning question? I can see we are about to be closed out of the system because it was timed. Any other? Let me look at the charts. Thank you, Rhoda. Great, insightful, much appreciated, very informative. Thank you. I personally appreciate the effort you put in preparing and presenting. I think those are just appreciation, commendation. Thank you. I'm happy for that. Any burning, very final before we are locked out by the system. It's normally timed, and I think we were given 15 minutes. Any very last one? You've been a very good class, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again. And we are happy. It has made our Saturday. I'm happy to interact. I'm sure we have learned from all of you. And thank you very, very much. Just in case, now we can just chat, but I'm sure the recording will be stopped any minute. I wish you
Rhoda.
Karibu sana.
Yeah, maybe just a last question. You, out of interest, personal interest, you mentioned a law university that is virtual. Would you mind sharing?
No, I'm in the University of Nairobi, the University of Nairobi. The evening classes, there are a lot of old people there because of the exigencies of the work. They're able to allow virtual classes, courtesy of COVID.
Thank you.
So you're able to join the evening classes, and we've been virtual. We've been the first lot who have been lucky. So you can join us. Karibu sana. You'll feel comfortable. We are quite old there.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So that marks the end of our HR competency training. I have enjoyed myself as well. And thank you. And looking forward to seeing you in our future trainings with ACHRP. Asanteni sana.
Next week, we shall have the...
Oh, sorry, Dan. Sorry.
Yes. Next week, Rhoda, you will take us through competency iceberg model. And our participants today, I hope we'll see you then as we build on what we've learned today. Thank you very much.
Karibu. For those who don't, I'm sure you all know Dan. Dan is our founder of ACHRP. He's the founder of this institution. So we are here courtesy of him. For the few of you who may not know Dan, he's always on the background. We are his foot soldiers. So thank you very much, Dan. And always be on the lookout for the trainings we offer.
Thank you, Rhoda. Thank you. You've done very well. You want to win? Thank you.